Welcome to the Fantasy Fangirls Podcast, where two sisters dive deep into beloved fantasy lore, characters, themes, theories, and more.
I'm Lexi, older sister and fantasy lore nerd.
And I'm Nicole, younger sister and romantic at heart.
And today is the day. It is our final episode of our Onyx Storm deep dive. I just can't believe it. This episode 12 of Onyx Storm by Rebecca Yarros covers chapters 62 through 66, the end of this book.
We have been preparing for this moment since December. It feels like it has been so many months in the making, and to finally get to this point where we're talking about the 12 hours, the brother, all of these different things. I'm just so excited to be here.
But before we begin, please listen closely to our spoiler warning. Friends, this is episode 12, where we are literally talking about the end of this book. So spoilers for all of Onyx Storm.
If you do not know what I mean when I say what you asked me to, and why it made all of us scream expletives, then please go finish Onyx Storm. We beg of you. We will be here when you're done.
Next, we at Fantasy Fangirls are adults who say adult things about adult books. In other words, friends, this podcast is rated R.
You know those expletives I was just talking about? We will definitely be saying them again today. So please be mindful of those little listening ears.
Additionally, we are so excited to see you at upcoming live events. We will be featured guests at Enchanticon in St. Louis, Missouri, August 15th through 17th.
Then we will be at the Everflame Ball along with Penn Cole for the first ever Kindred's Curse Saga Ball on August 30th in Castle Rock, Colorado. We will also be back at the Dragon Gauntlet in Boyne City, Michigan, September 12th through 13th.
Then Romantasy BookCon in Orlando, Florida, October 23rd through 25th, where we're interviewing Rebecca Yarros again at Disney World.
Check out our website or the links below for more information to all of these events.
Last thing before we wrap up this incredible Onyx Storm journey, if you love Fantasy Fangirls and want more events, more content, more community, and so much more, please check out Fantasy Fan Club.
We have 3 membership tiers that you can join, and yes, the names are going to be changing soon as we switch over to our Kindred's Curse Saga coverage, so this is the last time I'm saying the Empyrean name, so soak it up, friends. I know I will be. First off, we have Tier 1, the Cadets, which includes access to our Boppin' Discord, live Q&As from Lexi and I, a book club, exclusive author interviews, community events, promo codes for live events, plus 20% off all merch, which just got a glow up. Ayo! This is all for $6 a month, or you can join the Dragon Riders, which includes everything from the first tier, plus early access to ad-free episodes, our full episode outlines, and special voting privileges. That is for $10 a month. And lastly, we have Tier 3, the Iron Squad, which includes everything from the previous 2 tiers, plus more behind-the-scenes content, a welcome gift, giveaways, a private Discord channel, and your name shouted out on the podcast. That is for $25 a month. And in honor of our Kindred's Curse Saga coverage starting so soon, we are offering a limited time deal for annual memberships, where instead of the usual 2 months off, you get a full 3 months off of any of the tiers.
Join the party at fantasyfangirls.com/fan club. The link is also in the show notes. And really and truly, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for supporting us as we've turned this podcast into a dream come true. It's literally all because of you.
And now it is time to go to the temple, and we're gonna get married.
For the last time, Nicole will do us the honor of summarizing what happens in this stretch of chapters. So listen up, because Battle Brief is in session for the final chapters of Onyx Storm. It's the home stretch, Nicole. Take it away with chapters 62 through 66.
Chapter 62. Still in the throes of battle with Theophony, Violet decides it's time to practice her WWE and slams her head forward, making contact with Theophony's face. When they say, use your head, brilliant fucking woman, I don't think this is what they meant. With Violet no longer in her grasp, Theophony decides now is the time to start yapping away, dropping so many helpful tips and tricks for fighting a venom. Again, this is from the woman who chastises Berwyn for running his mouth to Jack. Right when Violet thinks the end is near, claws close around her. Tairn, is that you? Nope, it's Sigale, but only for a second, as Violet is thrown to Tairn in a fun game of human hot potato. Setting her sights on the surrounding wyvern, Violet strikes down as many as she can before risking burnout. With most of the sky now wyvern free, Violet focuses on her main objective. It's time to kill Theophony. Chapter 63, POV change! Oh, hello, Imogen. Fancy meeting you here. Atop Glaine's back, Imogen has the best seat in the house for watching the chaos and Drathus unfold. The wyvern are still attacking, but Glane is pouncing, ready to retaliate. Sorry, Glane, I know you're keeping track, but that still only counts as one! But, Uh-oh, the Venom are heading to the spiral tower of Drathus. Launching herself onto the wall, Imogen and a very bloodied GFDD are met with the Dark Wielder Firebender, ready to roast them for dinner. But don't worry, Dane, Imogen will protect you by turning your shield to stone! But there's no time to talk about second signets, because we're going into the tower. 3 Quinns are taking on a purple-cloaked Dark Wielder with a swish and flick of her wrist. Imogen's dagger buries deep into the Venom's chest, but it was too late, and Quinn was also hit with a dagger to her heart. Quinn Hollis, we commend your soul to Malik. We also commend Garrick for carrying 2 people at once. Chapter 64, and it's back to Violet. Theophony has Violet right where she wants her, but Violet is quick on the draw and strikes repeatedly. Violet's aim is about as accurate as a stormtrooper on a clear summer's day, aka she missed every single strike. It looks like Theophony took inspiration from SpongeBob and Patrick jellyfishing, because using the world's largest butterfly net, she captures Tairn, causing him to come crashing out of the sky. Again, he really should try skydiving instead, a much safer adrenaline rush. After successfully freeing themselves from the net, Violet suddenly remembers she still has Aric's mail. Violet is now the proud owner of an old marble dagger. Theophony tries to taunt Violet, but she's not taking the bait, and with a perfectly timed blackout that we're sure means nothing, right? It's now or never. Seeing that this very well might be her end, Theophony tries to book it and then bounces off of an invisible wall. Welcome back, our favorite teenage dragon, Andarna. Violet uses this moment of distraction to stab Theophony with the Dune Temple dagger, and she desiccates like a grape into a raisin. Goodbye to our Venom bestie, Theophony. Chapter 65. Another POV change? Welcome back, His Grace, Duke of Tyrandor, Professor of Signet Sparring, Second Lieutenant, Warden of the Light. Wait, that's the wrong book. But things are not going very well for Zaddy. With Sigale trapped in her very own jellyfishing net, Xaden is livid, ready to destroy anyone and anything who tries to come for his dragon. But that's not the only thing stoking the fire. Panchchek and his slimy, traitorous ass have finally joined Team Berwyn, along with a new mysterious brother. Berwyn tries to persuade Xaden to join the dark side, but this only pushes Xaden further and further onto the ice. So, falling to his knees, and not in the way we like it, Xaden channels from the earth and unleashes his shadows and the last fragments of his soul, with the exception of one tiny piece that Violet saved. Chapter 66. 12 hours later. Violet, where have you been? Bed empty? No note? Dragon gone? You could have died! Coming out of a fog, and Violet's doing just fine. Actually, she's hella confused as to why Big Brother Brennan is so worried about her whereabouts. But that's only the tip of the iceberg of his worries. There's dead dragons, riders, elders, oh my! And not to mention there's missing riders and dragons and eggs. I know the price of eggs is high, but damn! Trying to rack her brain and remember her whereabouts, Violet discovers a piece of paper. What's on this piece of paper, you ask? It's an official blessing of her very legal and very binding marriage to His Grace Xaden Ryerson. But that's not all that's new. Big Bro also points out a very obvious, very flashy emerald ring that's adorning Violet's finger. Snapping her attention to Imogen, Violet demands answers from her pink-haired friend. Slowly meeting her stare, Imogen admits that she only did what Violet asked her to do. End of book!
Now that we're done with Onyx Storm, it is time to put this trophy book on our bookcases. And you can imagine, Nicole and I have a lot of books, to the point I actually got myself a new sleek black bookcase the other day, and you know I got it from Wayfair. It's home project season. Whether you're making a little update or refreshing up your favorite spaces, like new kitchen cabinet hardware or decor or furniture, maybe even doing a full renovation, Wayfair has stylish and quality home improvement products for every budget.
I hope you enjoy this background, because the next time you see it as we do a deep dive episode, it will be different with furniture from Wayfair. There's something for every style and every home, no matter your space or budget. Wayfair makes it easy to tackle your spring home goals with endless inspiration, whether you need a light refresh or an organization overhaul. And they offer free and easy delivery, even on the big stuff. My bookcases that I'm about to have, all free delivery. They'll even help set it up for you.
Shop the best selection of home improvement online. Get renovating with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's Wayfair. Tair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. All right, writers, it is time to don our signet power and discuss key insights, character analysis, lore, foreshadowing theories, and so much more. I know we're going to keep saying this throughout this episode, but it's the last time we're donning our signet power here, so let's make it count. First, a quick refresher on where we left off with Violet last episode before switching to Rhee's POV at Madara Pass, because things are not looking so good for a brilliant fucking woman. Theophony has Violet pinned to the ground with a dagger at her throat as this evil villain bestie holds onto one of Violet's hands, palm down to the earth to coax her to reach for power. Theophony is taunting Violet to try and save the civilians at the pass, but that's when Violet trusts Rhee to take the lead by defending the pass from the approaching wyvern that bypassed the city. So here Violet is, pinned to the ground with her neck arched against Theophony's blade. Taking a risk to get out of this dangerous and vulnerable position, Violet taunts her evil villain bestie to, quote, do her worst. Oh my goodness, yes, this is absolutely the definition of risk, but hey, it works. Surprised by this acceptance of death, Theophony lifts her dagger from Violet's throat just enough for Violet to then slam her forehead straight into Theophony's nose and knock her off balance, enabling Violet to get free from her hold.
I want to just say go Violet for slamming her head so hard that Theophony clutches her nose and she's like, shit, that'll never straighten out. Sucks to suck, Theophony, and your immortal self, you now have to live with a crooked nose forever if you didn't die.
Before we continue with their final showdown, we're pausing for something I'd like to call battle checkpoint. There are so many moving parts in this final battle, some of which may be a clue as to who the new brother is. So a few times this episode, we're going to do a quick check-in with where characters currently are.
And if there was ever an episode to have a map of Navarre pulled up, this is the one. If you're listening on your phone, there is a link in the show notes for easy access to a map.
So right now, of course, we have Violet and Theophony battling while Theophony tries to get Violet to turn to the dark side. They are a few miles north of Dreythus, where Theophony had initially held Mira and Tiny captive. Tairn was seen carrying Tiny, Mira's dragon, in the chains up to safety at the top of the cliffs before Theophony's windstorm started. He was escorted by Marb and Brennan, and remember that Brennan is carrying Mira, so once they land, Brennan can start mending Tiny. This means Tairn is out of range from Violet until he returns to her, and because of the distance between them, she's not able to channel her power and wield. Because of the windstorm Theophony created back in Chapter 60, all of the dragons in Dreythus had to land, but now the wind has stopped and it's just raining, which means the dragons and the wyvern can fly again. This is when it cuts to Rhee's POV, where she instructs her group to take flight. So she, Riddick, Sawyer, Kat, Marin, Brager, and Nev are northwest, protecting the Madara Pass that the evacuees are hiking up so they can get behind the Arician wards. Xaden, Bodhi, and Dane have been spotted near the city walls with the officers, where they are in combat as part of the first line of defense for the city of Dreythus, which is south of where Violet currently is. This is also where Kaori, Imogen, and Quinn are. Garrick is distance walking Jack in the chest to somewhere that is not near the venin. Arisha, we think, and wondered about last episode. The first years are at the top of the pass, helping civilians get up to safety, except for Aric, who went rogue and flew south to the port of Sudra to retrieve the Zelna advance party. Sloane is supposed to have gone back behind the wards and joined the first years.
Okay, now that we are all caught up on who is where, let's zero back in on our girl Theophony, who is seeing this showdown as her opportunity to finally get Violet to turn. With Violet pretty much announcing that she would rather accept death than go venin, Theophony tries to deflect, saying that, quote, another will come along, you're not special. Sorry, Theophony, you kind of already showed your hand, admitting that with Violet, you'd get the favor of this mysterious him that we discussed last episode. Cough, cough, General Daramore, cough, cough.
I am so curious if there is more to this obsession of bringing Violet to the dark side. Is it, I'll say, quote, just because she's a lightning wielder, which is certainly a major reason in and of itself. Or maybe her and Xaden have been the primary targets because they are the lightning and shadow wielders of this generation, like the one back in the Great War that helped defeat the venin. So this is the venin's way of proactively taking them off the board against the venin and ensuring the venin can win this time around, with both the lightning and shadow wielders on their side. And with Violet being bonded to Andarna, or rather past tense as far as we know in the story at this point, she's a lot more valuable with her Irid. So Violet is a double win, bonded to an Irid with unique and powerful magic, and she's a lightning wielder.
Well, and I also keep going back to this idea that she's pure power, right? Yeah. And if someone is pure power, I don't know if they would drain her, but I gotta think that if they even drained her a little bit, that would be like an extra oomph for them. So, you know how they really want the hatching grounds? Violet could potentially be a walking hatching ground for them to drain.
I just don't get that impression from the way that Theophony is trying to bring her over to their side and then how she's just willing to kill her.
That's fair. I don't know if it would be like a full-blown killing or if it would be like a slow draining or if it's just for whoever this him is to drain and then he's like this OP immediate can kill everyone. I don't know. But there is something to Violet's power, I think, beyond just, like you were saying, quote unquote, just lightning wielding.
Does that mean that she would have to have Tairn's power to channel as well?
Not necessarily, because if she pulls from the earth, it would just entirely depend on how that works. Does Xaden still have shadows if Sigale stops channeling to him? I'm assuming so, but we don't know. Theophony is finally ready, though, to show Violet that she is not fucking around this time. The Venom love to do shit so slowly. Like, she descends really slowly on her wyvern. Berwyn descended really slowly on his wyvern. She's now really slowly. They love drama. They just love the drama. She may be playing with Violet's emotions here, but I think she's also testing Violet to truly see if Violet would give her life before turning.
She's trying to call her bluff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Nothing like putting someone on the brink of literal survival to see if they really mean it, like you're saying, calling their bluff. Especially if Theophony, gave her step-by-step instructions on how to avoid being drained from a venom like this. This is exactly how Soleil died, which is just so sad, that flashback. Oh.
Theophony's like, okay, I need you, but if you absolutely, positively refuse, then I guess you have to die. Maybe not the most ideal situation for her and the Venom, but better than having a lightning wielder on the side fighting against them. And besides, Violet no longer has her earaid, so she's not as powerful to them.
In order to keep from being drained via this method, one must occupy ground that already has had magic repurposed. I love how she says repurposed rather than having had magic drained. The easiest solution is for that person to drain it themselves. Therefore, they're already standing on magically drained or repurposed ground. Quote, "If you do so before I get there, you'll live. You'll keep your love, at least what it masquerades as, and your power, and even your dragon if you wish." This is extremely important information. Thank you so much, Theophony. She is throwing everything she possibly can think of at Violet. She's threatening her survival. She's making sure she's threatening her dragon, her power, her love. It's such a helpful download, and it does not have the effect that Theophony is wanting at all. Shocking.
Now with the knowledge that repurposed magic can serve as a barrier for her, Violet sprints to the nearest wyvern carcass and uses her daggers to help her climb up its leg. I understand this as wyvern being created from venom, they don't have their own magic for venom to drain. So as Theophony drains the ground, the desiccation ripples underneath Violet atop the dead wyvern, and it doesn't impact the wyvern because it doesn't have any magic to be drained from. And anyway, Violet lives! So clever.
Mysterious wing beats fill Violet's ears, and just as Theophony goes, "No!" talons wrap around Violet as she throws her arms out. Tairn to the rescue! It's not Tairn, though. It is Sigale. This is so rare when another's dragon swoops in to help someone, and as I'll say kind of a gesture as this is, Sigale has no problem letting Violet know that she is such an inconvenience, even if she does compliment Violet on a job well done of keeping Theophony occupied. But this ironic duo is quite short-lived, flying west towards the pass where Tairn has been coming from, which in Violet's opinion is the wrong direction because Xaden is south. Sigale practically throws Violet into the air with an "she's all yours," just as power forces itself back into Violet's veins, which means Tairn is back, thank goodness. And in a move so practiced it's practically muscle memory, Tairn catches her by the shoulders, swings her up, and she maneuvers herself into the saddle as Sigale flies away.
Our fearsome duo reunited at last. Violet and Tairn are ready to do major damage in the way they're meant to face combat together. To the south where the city is a horde of about 100 wyvern, and there are 11 venom among them, including Theophony on a wyvern bigger than Coda, which, remember, Coda is even bigger than Tairn and is the largest dragon on the continent. So holy moly, this is a gigantic wyvern. I love how Tairn takes this news. Quote, "It would be my finest kill to date."
What a cocky curmudgeon. I love it. At this time, Violet is looking through Tairn's eyes, seeing the battle continue above the northern wall of Drathis. And that's when Violet spots Bodhi and his green dragon Cure amongst the riders in combat. Well, shit. Xaden's gonna be so pissed because Bodhi is supposed to be protected back in Erasia, but it looks like he went against orders and he's all about the combat. Side note, in regards to Violet seeing through Tairn's eyes, she asks why riders develop the signet of Farsight if they are able to see basically the same way through a dragon's eyes. And he says, quote, "The privilege of our eyesight is afforded to few." It's just a nice little nod, given how Andarna has been doing this with Violet since threshing, and it just shows how close they've been from the very start. Oh,
I wonder if this afforded to few line means few dragons are willing to do this with their humans, or if the bonds are unique and it's rare for them to even be able to do this. I'm kind of leaning toward the latter.
same.
Since Violet has orders to occupy or kill Theophony, and there's a 100 wyvern between her and the subjective right now, let's fry some wyvern. After Tairn tells the dragons defending Drathus to pull back to the airspace above the city, Violet lets loose, to the point where Professor Carr's training actually comes in handy. When there's this many wyvern, accuracy doesn't matter. It's all about quantity of lightning strikes in this moment. Ka-chow! 7 wyvern down. Another strike. 5 more fall. Then 4, 6, 3, 8. Who do we appreciate? Violet! Violet! Go Violet!
Pause for quick wyvern bolt math, because Violet takes out 39 wyvern in a matter of minutes. That's insane! I'm so proud of her. Good job, Violet.
As Violet nears burnout, she takes a quick water break before they jump back into action, this time to target the Venin. Seeing her and Tairn diving toward them, 6 Venin launch for the city to join the large horde of wyvern. 2 fly toward Tairn and Violet, and 3 retreat into the mountains, including Theophony. Damn it, we gotta go after her! But since there's already 2 Venin heading toward them, let's go ahead and kill them. One of these Venin seems to be an ice wielder, but ka-chow! Violet sends a lightning bolt straight through his head, leaving him and his wyvern instantly dead. Huzzah! But we're not done yet! Except, yes, we are, because Tairn snapped in the other Venin's direction and the Venin and wyvern retreat. You weenie! But oh no! Our evil villain bestie is wielding another tornado! Coming from the northern field where they previously were. And the tornado's heading straight for the city, which includes the dragons fighting in the airspace above. So first things first, ground the riot! Okay, now let's go get Theophony.
But wait! Violet notices Mulvic flying into the fray. It turns out Aric was not deciding to just poo-poo his orders and flee from conflict. No, he's coming in with the advance party from Zelna. Yay! 1,000 soldiers and their horses will be here in less than half an hour. Okay, they just need to last another half an hour, and then the riders will need to focus on getting the wyvern to the ground so the soldiers can have any effect on them whatsoever. Violet also takes this opportunity to check in on Xaden, and she's met with a wall of black ice. Uh-oh. She also notices that Cure is disappearing into the fight above the city. As Violet's breath stutters, she begins saying to Tairn that they have to go and help. This is exactly what Theophony wanted, though. She lured Violet close to the city. Violet saw a fuck ton of people who need her help. And then Tairn cuts in with a reminder. One objective. Quote, decide our fate. This line from Tairn shows just how much he trusts Violet. Back in chapter 47, there's an epigraph from Article 1, Section 2 of the Dragon Riders Codex that states, quote, a dragon determines its last flight and its riders. Normally, it's the dragon who is in charge, but Tairn's line here of decide our fate is showing how much he's relinquishing that decision to Violet. Way to delegate, Tairn. Violet takes stock of the fray and notices Glaine, Imogen's dragon, launching to aid Cure despite the orders to ground the riot. Ah, that's right, Violet. It's not always up to you to help everyone. You can trust others to care for those you and they love. And she knows that Imogen and Glaine are not ones to lay down and accept defeat. Okay, now we can go fly for Theophony.
While we unfortunately aren't flying our dragons to our destinations, we do have a lot of travel planned for the rest of the year. And I'm so excited to put my new suitcase from Quince to use for all those trips. Quince doesn't just have clothing that Nicole and I love, they also offer first-class quality suitcases that are sleek, stylish, and sturdy.
Everyone deserves to treat themselves with Quince's high-quality travel essentials at fair prices, like lightweight European linen styles from $30, washable silk tops, and comfy lounge sets, with premium luggage options and stylish tote bags to carry it all. The best part, all Quince items are 50 to 80% less than similar brands.
For your next trip, treat yourself to the luxe upgrades you deserve from Quince. Go to quince.com/FFG for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/FFG to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/FFG.
Which brings us to Imogen's chapter. Much like Rhiannon's, Imogen's chapter is here to let us know what is happening elsewhere on the battlefield, especially as we get Bodhi and Garrick mentions, because this is the chapter that has a huge hiccup about the brother being Bodhi. After all, Violet is after Theophony, Xaden is south. Imogen and Rhi are really the only ones in the thickest of the areas of the fight. But like Rhi's chapter also helped us learn more insight into Rhiannon as a character, as a leader, Imogen's offers more insight into her own character, especially being a marked one, and giving her more of that three-dimensional humanity. We learn about her family and that she had an older sister and a mother who were both executed after the failed rebellion. A mother who was definitely important enough in the rebellion to have her final words noted and redacted. I wonder whose dragon Glain was. Was it her mother or her sister Katrina?
That's a good point. I could definitely see it bringing her mother. I guess I just always assumed it was a grandparent.
Oh, possibly. Which, yeah, let's talk about this, because Imogen has a dragon who was bonded to an ancestor, and she has a second signet from it. We will get much more into that in a moment, but man, that's another huge reason as to why this chapter is so important. And of course, we also get the one real big death in this book through this POV, and it's through the POV of the person who it would hurt the most to experience. Quinn's death would not have been the same if we were in like Violet's POV, for instance, like normal.
Exactly. It would have been, I'll say a little bit more like Traeger's, but like for instance, if we saw Traeger's death from Kat's POV, that would have been even more gut-wrenching, right?
Exactly.
We also get to see another dragon and their bonded rider dynamic, which is so much fun. Imogen and Glain have been together longer than the other bonds we've seen firsthand in battle, and there's such a balance of camaraderie and playful bickering between them. They really do work as a team with their movements, information relaying, agreements and disagreements, warnings and comforting. All the dragons we've gotten insight into have a certain arrogance and authority about them, but they've each got their different personalities, and their unique qualities are pretty reflective of their breed colors and the traits that go along with them. Aric, for instance, was reasonable as a green dragon. Glain's a little more chaotic, being an orange. And then, of course, we know Tairn very well with his sense of authority as black dragon.
I love seeing an orange dragon and their chaoticness. Orange dragons in the fandom have kind of gotten a bad rep. After all, Bade was orange, Soulless was orange. It's not the best track record to be orange. But we knew from Rebecca Yarros that not all oranges are bad omens, and she might have specifically been talking about Marb at the time. But I just love seeing the loving chaos that is Imogen and Glain and that they share.
And then, of course, I think all of us readers can agree the best part about Imogen and Glain's dynamic is the continued argument about counting the dead. All I can think of is Legolas and Gimli from Lord of the Rings, Glain being like, 17! And Imogen's like, yeah, pretty sure it was 16 because Glain only wounded that wyvern for someone else to kill. And then Imogen throws that logic back at Glain when her dragon tries to count 18 when it was actually Imogen who wounded the wyvern. Nice way of inserting some humor in the intensity of this battle. Before officially diving into Imogen's chapter, it's time for another battle checkpoint. Tiny is at the top of the pass and getting mended by Brennan. He'll live. Phew! Rhi, Riddick, Sawyer, and the Griffin Flyers are still defending the pass. Aric has come from the south, bringing the advance party from Zelna, which includes 1,000 soldiers and their horses from the port of Sudra. With his precognition, he knew they would accidentally arrive there instead of Corden, like they planned. So he went against orders and flew to get them and ensure they get to this battle, which they're less than 30 minutes away now. Violet just took out a bunch of wyvern with her lightning, and Tairn is now flying for Theophony as they focus on their one objective of occupying and killing her. Remember that Tairn gave orders to all the dragons that they need to be grounded as Theophony's tornado approaches the city. However, Bodhi and his dragon, Cure, are locked in battle above the city. 3 wyvern are trying to rip Cure apart, so Glain and Imogen disobey orders to stay grounded as they race to help Cure and Bodhi. Dane and his dragon, Kath, also launch into the sky to take on 2 other wyvern crossing over the burning city. No one has seen Xaden or Sigale since Tairn returned to Violet earlier. They aren't at the city gates like they previously were. Imogen hasn't seen Xaden's shadows in the past 20 minutes, and Sigale has withdrawn from Tairn so he cannot communicate with her. Tairn and Sigale have not yet felt Sigale's rage, where she gets caught in the net, though. Kaori and the other officers hold the eastern, southern, and western territory, which is quickly becoming the epicenter of the battle thanks to the wind. Quinn has been in the armory in the turret below, setting up the 2 cases of alloy-hilted daggers to power the wards. Felix has sent for more, but more is 4 hours away in Arisha, so Garrick is having to distance walk to retrieve more supplies, which means Felix Alex must know about his second signet. And with all the distance walking today, Garrick has to be nearing burnout. As Imogen notes, the Venin are done fucking around as they enter the city themselves. Based on all these subtle clues, it seems like Chapter 63, which is Imogen's POV, Chapter 64, Violet's POV, and Chapter 65, Xaden's POV, all overlap and are happening at approximately the same time.
Imogen's chapter picks up right where Violet's left off, with Imogen going after Cure, who has a deep gash along his chest, and Bodhi, despite being ordered to stay grounded. And it looks like she's not the only one, because like Lexi said, Dane is appearing to break all the rules now, and he's on his way to take out some Wyvern right above the city. Taking out a few more Wyvern, equaling their count to 18 or 17, depending on who you ask, all seems still for a heartbeat. That is, until a dark wielder in purple robes and one in red leathers are walking across the northern and eastern walls, which connect to the spiral tower that makes up the most notable landmark of Drathis. It happens to be where Quinn, the only person who Imogen truly loves on the battlefield, is helping to organize a supply of alloy-hilted daggers to presumably extend the power of the wards. Ah, that's probably why these two dark wielders are heading that way very purposefully in that direction. New orders. Help defend the tower from the approaching Venin with Dane, because the infantry are not going to do much good. They're literally getting flung off the wall and plummeting 50 feet to their death. They're the stormtroopers of this world. It's the infantry.
I feel bad for these infantry soldiers. They are just no match for the Venin whatsoever. And they're probably like, I did not sign up for this.
They're like, I wanted to fight big birds in the sky. Imogen jumps off Ghislaine and, bending her knees to absorb the impact, she lands on the northern wall and takes off at a full sprint towards the back of the Venin just as Dane joins the chase. But damn it, just as they're 20 feet out from the Dark Wielder, he pivots and swings his staff and fire erupts in their direction. Hello, fire bending Venin! But shit, what do? Do they jump off? No, that's stupid. The infantry just demonstrated what happens when they do that.
With no other option where Imogen and Dane get out of this alive as fire streams toward them, Imogen mentally opens the door to her childhood home to channel power. She shouts for Dane to get behind her, and she takes the shield from him. Working quickly, she flips the shield upside down and slams it onto the stones at her feet. She and Dane drop behind the shield, and she makes the shield turn to stone. The fire blazes, flowing around them, but because the shield protecting them is now stone, they did not burn. Huzzah! But what the hell does this mean? It means that Imogen has the second signet of stone wielding, baby! Or something to that effect. Rock wielding, stone wielding, maybe even earth wielding. Semantics. This is so badass and so cool. Being a stone wielder makes sense for Imogen's character too. When I think of Avatar's earthbenders, for instance, they're known for their strength, resilience, and stubbornness. That's Imogen in a nutshell. Of course she's an earthbender. It also brings back the line from Sawyer in chapter 7, where he says, quote, I can't think of a single rock or earth wielder in our history, which means Imogen's second signet is so rare it's not known to even exist. How cool! This sequence is also so easy to overlook because it's entirely show don't tell with her second signet. I think every single time we mention Imogen having a second signet on social media, we get so many DMs of people being like, wait, what are you talking about? It's never stated on the page that this is her second signet, but all of the descriptions and context is there. I love it.
It is so satisfying. And it really makes me wonder, like we were talking about the semantics, can she turn anything to stone?
Well, and then there's also the idea where she does slam the shield onto stone. So is it actually like a material wielder where that could even be it too? So we don't know exactly what her second signet is, but it's something to the effect of she just turned a shield to stone. After the Venin shoots his fire in their direction, Dane throws his alloy-hilted dagger and kills the Venin. Ha ha! Which, yes, Dane has now seen two of the marked ones use their second signet in this battle. Garrick earlier, and now Imogen. I will be so curious to see how he takes all this news next book. Though with so much going on, I don't see it being a super big deal that Dane knows their big secret now. There's too many other big secrets going on.
If anything, I feel like it's priming us for him to learn about Violet's second signet. Like now that he's now he's holding all this second signet information, I could definitely see him learning about Violet's either next book or the book after.
I could see that too, yes.
But remember, that was only one of the dark wielders. That was the one in the red leather, because it looks like the purple-robed one just disappeared into the tower, along with a second one in crimson heading that way from the eastern wall. So Dane's like, I'm going to take that one in crimson. Imogen, you go get the one in the tower. Running down the stairs, Imogen gets out on the third-story landing to see the purple-robed Venin swiping his green-tipped dagger at 3 different Quinns. And for a brief moment, Imogen's like, oh, thank God. Quinn is just projecting. These 3 forms aren't her. They're just a distraction. In fact, she's probably with Felix. She's probably trying to set up the new, ward weapon spot as fast as possible to get the wards extended. And that's where Imogen sees the 4th Quinn sneakily heading over to the Venin with her Labrys, which is a double-headed axe strapped to her back. I'm guessing that's just the immediate, that's Quinn tell. And she has an alloy dagger in her hand. Imogen and Quinn both attack together, hitting their mark as the Venin desiccates, and he dies! Victory screech! But no, the Venin's green-tipped dagger is lodged right into Quinn's heart. And as she falls, she only has one question for her best friend. Quote, did they make it? She's referring to the top of the tower when Imogen was walking in and 2 women, both carrying toddlers, were running out. They told Imogen that she has to help her. Turns out that her is Quinn, who helped the 2 women and children escape. Sadly, there is no help to be given to Quinn. And with no menders on site or no runes for such healing, Quinn is dying. So Quinn asks Imogen to tell Jax, Quinn's girlfriend, that she loves her and that she was the best part of her life. Kruth, however, Quinn's dragon, became her life.
The way Quinn admits she's scared of dying and doesn't want to be scared, and how Imogen comforts her. Oh, my heart.
Quinn says that Imogen should, quote, tell him and you find some happy. I bet anything that Imogen will see Garrick next book either for the first time and she tells him like right on the spot, or she'll kiss him as the greeting, but it's all like she has to finally confess her feelings in some way because of her friend and that promise that she makes to her, even though she never officially promises. I think she internally did, which is just lovely.
Especially with Garrick being among the missing, and they're now separated for who knows how long.
At the end of it all, Quinn is happy that her best friend Imogen, or Jen, who's been with her since the parapet to Malik's doorstep, is with her in her final moments. And as Quinn's final words state, quote, they made it a good one.
Ugh. That we made it a good one is so heartbreaking, especially followed up with the very quick flashback of how they did meet on the parapet, kind of like Violet and Rhee. Quinn may have been one of the more minor side characters, but her death from Imogen's POV, it just gives it that extra knife twist. If we were in Violet's POV and Quinn died, it wouldn't have really been a big deal like we were saying earlier. But experiencing it alongside Imogen and being in the moment with her as her best friend, the only one she truly loves in this battle, dies in her arms, it was really moving, at least for me, and it really demonstrates the power of POV in these stories. A lot of us readers were surprised that there wasn't a bigger character death in Onyx Storm. We were emotionally prepared, or at least as prepared as we could be, to have our hearts ripped out this book, and there ended up not being a big character death. But I do love how Rebecca substituted no big character death for this from Imogen's POV to give Quinn a beautiful as well as extra sad send-off. Because Quinn dying is a big character death for Imogen. It would be like if Rhee died in Violet's arms for us. Imogen has already lost her mom and her older sister when they were executed after the rebellion, and now she has had her best friend Quinn to bring out her nice side, when we know her from Violet's POV as a friend who won't admit she's even friends with Violet. But Quinn has been her best friend through it all. They've been inseparable since Parapet. I could definitely see us getting more of Imogen's POV in the rest of the series, and this hole that Quinn leaves will be very impactful for her character.
Holding Quinn's body, Imogen starts to notice how the stones around her are losing their color. The building is literally being drained as we speak, and that's when she hears a familiar voice. Have no fear, because Garrick is here! And he's like, we gotta fucking go! But Imogen refuses to leave her friend. So, leaning into Imogen and sliding his hand behind her neck, Garrick shares that he refuses to leave her too. Swoon, sir! While Imogen might not be thinking at this very moment to share her feelings with Garrick, she does note that for the first time, she doesn't care if he's seeing her at her weakest, because he's right there too, being completely drained from walking so much. Imogen is one of those characters with walls upon walls upon walls up, rarely letting anyone in, except for Quinn, like Lexi was saying. So letting Garrick to see all of her vulnerability is a really big deal for these two.
I think this moment between Imogen and Garrick is so important for their relationship arc. Imogen, like you were saying, always keeps her walls up, and telling Garrick how she feels about him is way too vulnerable. She's protecting herself from getting hurt. But like Quinn reminds her, if she tells him how she feels, she can find her own happiness. Garrick finds Imogen in her most vulnerable state right now, and it's the fact that she is at her weakest, most raw and torn down version of herself in this moment, and he doesn't care and only wants to help her, to save her. I think that'll really help when she does finally admit to him and is vulnerable again in a completely different way.
Garrick hoists both Imogen and Quinn into his arms, and he takes a single step just as the landing below them loses color. Quote, "Heat and light force my eyes shut as my stomach careens." I love that we get to experience distance walking. And when she finally opens her eyes, they are in a nondescript building with Trissa and Felix, both working as quick as possible to get makeshift wards up in Drathis.
So yes, they are still in Drathis, but a little further away from the center of the fighting. And if the Dark Wielders are draining the city walls, they're going to be coming for places like this building next. Garrick admits he can't distance walk anymore. Even if he gets to Arisha for more supplies, he won't have the energy to get back here. So since this is where the fighting is and where he's needed, Garrick is on a mission to, quote, find some fucking way to do something. And he walks toward the heart of the battle.
Oh my, it's time to take a little break from the heartbreak. When I'm feeling down, a little tasty drink always turns me around, and that's why we love Element.
If you're familiar with us here at Fantasy Fangirls, this is episode 12, you better be. You know we love Element. Not only does it help you hydrate, but every sip just feels like a treat. Element is a zero-sugar electrolyte drink mix and sparkling electrolyte water born from the growing body of research revealing that optimal health outcomes occur at sodium levels 2 to 3 times government recommendations. Each stick pack delivers a meaningful dose of electrolytes free of sugar, artificial colors, or other dodgy ingredients.
As the weather gets warmer, I'm loving trying like the citrus, and it's almost like, you know, having like a little lime on the side. It's like a little margarita, you know, but it's like actually really good for you. It's delicious. Of course, with the weather getting warmer, I'm also back on my mango chili craze with the salt and the watermelon. With these sparkling cans, I love sparkling water, and having it in Element form is just perfect.
Right now, Element is offering a free sample pack with any purchase. That's 8 single serving packets free with any Element order. That's a great way to try 8 flavors or share Element with a friend. Get yours at drinklmnt.com/FFG. This deal is only available through our link, so you have to go to drinklmnt.com/FFG. Let's do another battle checkpoint because there is a very important line at the end of Imogen's chapter that aligns with Xaden's POV chapter and gives us the biggest clue that these chapters are happening at the same time. Imogen looks up to the wyvern-filled sky, and a few moments later, she notices that the sky is darkening. And then toward the end of Xaden's chapter, as his shadows surge from the canyon and over the city, they rush, quote, over Imogen as she looks to the sky. Now, does this 100% confirm that their chapters are happening at the same time? No, but dang, it sure seems like it, where it's like 99.5% sure. Yeah. So at the end of Imogen's chapter, we have her, Trissa, and Felix in a nondescript building just outside of the fighting in the city. Trissa and Felix are weaving wards, which may be weak until they can be bolstered with more power, but these wards are their best shot to weaken the enemy and make those wyvern die. Kruth, who is Quinn's dragon, takes a wyvern straight to the ground. She's probably got an extra surge of anger now that her rider has died, R.I.P. Quinn. Then we have this very important note that Nicole is so frustrated about, but I have to say it. Bodhi is on his hands and knees across the town square, retching. Yes, we will absolutely be discussing this about Bodhi when we get to the brother possibilities. Because if Xaden's POV is happening at the same time, that eliminates Bodhi and probably Garrick from the brother possibilities. But if his POV is not the exact same, this could be a moment where Bodhi is about to pull from the source.
Or just had, and that's why he's retching. He's like, I can't believe I did this.
Yes. Again, we will talk all about that soon. Then there's Garrick, who, like I mentioned, has admitted he is burnt out, and since he can't wield anymore, he's going to find some other ways to be useful. Same argument here. This can either disqualify him from being the new brother because he's not in the canyon at the exact same moment as Xaden, or it can be evidence that he's about to turn Venin. Imogen tells Glayne to have every rider within the walls get over here and disarm. She knows there's no way they'll win this fight against the Venin and Wyvern in these numbers, so they need to target their focus on getting the wards up. And in order to get those wards up, they need as many alloy hilted daggers as possible, which means everyone needs to hand theirs over to have a chance at powering these wards and living through this. In the meantime, as the sky is darkening, presumably with Xaden's shadow spreading, Imogen thinks how Violet better take their leader out, or they're all doomed and this is all for nothing. So even if they do get the wards up, there's still a powerful Maven out there who's just going to attack again. Which brings us back to Violet's POV, picking right back up where they left off, again indicating that these chapters are happening at the same time.
As Violet and Tairn fly into the field where Theophony is waiting on a wyvern, having used the tornado wind to get her prey here faster, it is go time. But in the face of this standoff, Violet's anxiety gets the best of her for a moment. She's a cadet. Theophony is a maven who wields storms with eerie accuracy, probably because she's had centuries to practice, and Violet still needs a conduit to strike true. Violet's not necessarily accepting death by any means, but she is calculating how beyond outmatched she is to Theophony. There's no time to waste, though. Violet starts attempting to strike Theophony and her wyvern out of the sky, but she misses every single time. By now, hail is starting to fall from the sky and the size of peas. Ouch! That sounds terrible! And apparently the conduit is not having the hail too, because it shatters. Well, shit. It looks like it's time for just the strike and pray method that we've been using since book 1. Theophony and her wyvern fly through the sky, easily missing every single one of Violet's bolts. But it looks like Theophony is taking note from Annie, the musical, because the sun is out. She's stopping the storm so that it's harder for Violet to channel. Rude. This also means that Violet will have to take more power from Tairn with each bolt, aka she will burn out faster. Theophony's wyvern dives along the mountain range, and with the roar of agony filling Violet's ears, something has happened to Sigale.
So Violet reaches for her bond with Xaden, but the wall of ice repels her with brute force. Uh-oh, that's not good. Xaden and Sigale have been missing for at least 20 minutes, so something is very wrong. We will learn this is the moment Sigale is captured by the Dark Wielder's net after Xaden's been summoned to the Southern Canyon.
I bet you anything when she tries to reach out to him previously and the wall of black ice is there, that's when he started getting like officially summoned, where he was like, yep, officially moving there.
Yep, yeah. Absolutely. Well, and when he started moving, I think that's when Sigale blocked Tairn as well.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Speaking of getting captured in nets, though, a massive net with weights fall over Tairn. I wonder if the Venom timed the capture of Sigale and Tairn to be around the same time, because they knew the two mates would be distracted by the other's distress. The net smothers Tairn's wings and they get tangled up in the net, resulting in Tairn and Violet to fall out of the sky. Oh no! Fall down!
I have a question. How the fuck did they get a giant net with weights the size of desks and ropes the size of Xaden's forearm?
Which is very, very big.
Becky boy. So high that it was above Tairn and perfectly aimed to take him down. Like, how many wyvern were like flying around? Like, you know, like the parachute where they're like giant.
I was wondering the same thing. I was imagining some dark wielders like holding the net or lifting it up with magic. I guess there is magic in this world, so they could be doing
true.
that. Like over a cliff, and as soon as Tairn flies past, they just toss it. Thinking this is the end of the road for them, Violet tells Tairn he has been the gift of her life. It calls back to what her father's riddle was way back earlier this book, about how Lilith's dragon was her first love, too. I just love all this that we get about dragons and the bonds, and I love it. But Tairn is like, hell no, we're not dying from this. They hit the mountainside, bone crunching against rock, and Violet's left arm snaps. This causes her last alloy-hilted dagger to fall, leaving Violet with no more daggers that can kill Venom. This is very important for later. They slide down the mountain and eventually their momentum slows. They live! And Tairn is extra pissed at our evil villain bestie now. He and Violet work on escaping from the net by him breathing fire on it, and then Violet uses a rune that softens surfaces, which makes the fibers stretch and give way to help them. But they're still not out of the net yet. As all of this goes down, remember that package Sloane insisted she needed to deliver for Violet on Aric's behalf? Well, this package has been jabbing her in the side. Ha! Nice. And Violet finally sees what it is for the first time. A note from Aric that reads, quote, "For when you lose yours, strike in the dark, Violet." And it's accompanied with a carved piece of gray marble, a ceremonial-looking dagger with familiar flame-shaped etchings along the hilt. How did Aric know she'd lose her dagger? And why does he think a piece of rock can replace it? This is when Nicole and I were screaming about Aric definitely being a precog, and we were so fucking excited.
Which, quick pause for this flame-shaped etching, because what else is notably flame flame-shaped in this world. The patch denoting flame section in Basgiath War College is a flame-shaped patch. It seems obvious, but it's just another moment connecting who Violet is in her role in the War College, and then also Violet in her role with Dune, and connecting all of it together. I love it.
But no time for Violet to put 2 and 2 together right now. Theophany's approaching, and she is out of patience. This shit isn't funny or entertaining anymore, and she is over Violet's shenanigans. Violet and Tairn better get him completely out of this net right now, or Theophany will kill him like a trussed pig. So to buy her big curmudgeon of a dragon time to free himself, Violet is ready to face off with Theophany, even though she has no ally-hilted dagger, no conduit, and she is nearing burnout. Theophany muses that it was easy to, quote, catch the pair of them.
Tell that to the Venom who had to hold the net for hours and then time it perfectly.
This confirms that Sigale's recent roar was from getting captured.
After months of feeling taunted by Theophany, Violet is also done with this bitch. She just captured her dragon after all, which is a big no-no. So Violet attempts to get Theophany talking again, which again, I have to note how fucking funny it is that Theophany chastises Berwin for divulging so much information. And yet she's just running her mouth so much so that Violet knows she can get her talking and then wield as an interruption while she's distracted running her mouth. But each of the interruption strikes misses. She needs something that will taunt Theophany, and it dawns on her how to turn the tables. Quote, "Tell me, do you miss Umbriel? Do you not yearn for Temple?" The same words that the High Priestess used on Violet back in Umbriel. But as both Theophany shoots back at Violet, and as the High Priestess noted, Violet, even as touched by Dune, should have been yearning for Temple. From the High Priestess in Umbriel, quote, "Usually the touch creates such longing you can't help but return. Or perhaps you now favor another god." We should be paying attention to this. If there is another god that Violet unknowingly favors, who would that be? Because my best guess is Loyal, and that's yet another reason why we haven't gone to that isle, because going there would have given away that Violet, still I think unknowingly, is favored by the goddess Loyal. Think about the last time, though, that someone had talked to Theophany about Dune. I would bet my money it's been years, if not centuries. So it's no wonder that her eyes flare and her face twists with something so acute to longing. After all, she admits, quote, "Do you know the pain of never being allowed to return? Of knowing it would sever the very thing that's keeping me untouchable for all these years?" I cannot believe that it's just now dawning on me after months of a deep dive. What the hell brought Theophany to turn Venin? We know the High Priestesses would have immeasurable power on the Isle of Umbriel, which we still don't know what that means, but we know that she turned because, quote, "Why serve a god when you can become one?" Which is such a good evil villain line, by the way. Oh, so good. But what was the turning, haha, get it, point? What made her finally go, "I need more"? I want to know.
So I have a crack theory, is that Umbriel was the unnamed isle in the Second Krellblin Uprising deal, and she was so tempted by the possibility of dragon eggs that it led her down the path of clinging to more power. I'm literally just throwing spaghetti at the wall and had to
I
sneak
love it
one
when
more.
you do crack theories because they actually make so much sense. I
had to sneak one more Second Krellblin Uprising into this deep dive before we end it. And I will say this, when I think about it more logically, which I tend to do, I do think she's older than 2 centuries, probably more like 400 years old, which really does bring me back to what we've been talking about recently and wondering if she's somehow a cautionary tale on the continent and why they banned dedicating children. Though how knowledge of an Umbriel High Priestess turning Venin got to the continent stumps me completely, and it honestly seems a little bit unlikely. But anyway.
But then there's that second part of the quote where she says, quote, "Knowing that it would sever the very thing that kept me untouchable all these years." What is this very thing that kept her untouchable? Do signets not work on her because of this double power, I'll call it? Maybe that's why Bodhi couldn't turn off her signet?
I understand the very thing to be her power as a Venin.
Oh.
And just kind of like simple in that way, yeah.
Okay, that's fair, that's fair. But it looks like, yet again, we're not going to get answers to any of these questions.
Quote, "Putrid fear consumes the bond, followed by another roar, and Violet realizes it's Sigale. We will learn from Xaden's POV that this is the moment she is screaming for Xaden not to pull from the source. Even Violet shouts for Xaden right now, don't, but he can't hear her as a wall of pure darkness head their way. This is enveloping Drathis in darkness, and wyverns shriek as his shadows shred them apart. And the darkness is, quote, devouring the field in a fury of an Onyx Storm. Onyx Storm, people! That's the name of this book. The storm of shadows, the darkness that is devouring Xaden after he's tried to keep it under control all book. The thing that squeezes hope from Violet's chest as she understands what this insane display of shadow power means.
Because she knows that these are not Xaden's normal powered shadows. This is something else entirely. And in order for him to have this level of magic, he had to tap into the source, so much so that now it's a kind of force that will end worlds. So Violet reaches out to him in the only way she feels she can do in this moment when he's this far gone. Whispering down the black ice shielded bond, she says, quote, I love you. And the ice cracks, but not enough to stop the onslaught.
It's all Violet can give him in this moment, like other times when she sees that Xaden is losing control, expressing her love for him, reassuring him that he is loved no matter what, and she will never let him go, and she accepts him for all of who he is. That's usually what helps get Xaden off the ice. This time, though, Violet's reminder to him that she loves him might crack the ice, but he's too far gone for it to halt the approaching wave of darkness.
When we get to Xaden's chapter, we will go through what this whispered declaration means for him. But right now I want to focus on Violet. Her seeing this level of darkness is realizing that all her efforts, every possible path she's taken to find a cure, it's all led to his choice to turn more. And it's a soul-cracking realization for her to grapple with. She thinks, quote, I can't save him. The epigraph for chapter 1 of this book is Violet scratching out her motto, I will not die today, and replacing it with, I will save him. In the lead up to the book's release, this was a line that was used repeatedly in promotional material. But here is that one goal that Violet has dedicated everything to, shattering completely.
And in this moment, and I don't even know if she will find this out or remember finding out about it, but she doesn't know that Xaden is turning more for Sigale. So she does not know the reason for his choice yet, if she does find out at all.
But before she can shatter with the realization, Tairn reminds her of how she needs to leverage this darkness.
As Aric's note says, Violet needs to strike in the darkness. But wait. How would Aric know this? Let's go back to that whole question, right? We may have been talking about his signet all deep dive, but now is the time for Violet to put the puzzle pieces together. It's like Aric knew this would happen, and he alone knew to go get the Zelna reinforcements where they accidentally landed instead of in Corden. He had insisted Violet needed to guard Dune's temple to save Tyrrendor. He even yanked Lynx out of the way before a door opened. His signet has actually manifested, and he's a fucking precog. Quote, a real one, not like Melgren, who can only foresee battles. Haha, sucks to suck, Melgren, whose signet has been considered extremely powerful and useful. It's one of the reasons why he is the big leader of Navarre. But Arix takes his down like a million pegs.
Pause on signet talk, because that's always what happens when we're talking about signets. But this time, it's to tell you about O Positive. O Positive is a women's health company that offers a range of symptom-targeting supplements that support women at every stage of life, from their first period to well beyond their last.
O Positive has multiple best-selling women's health products that create real, tangible results with ingredients that are backed by clinical studies and shaped by board-certified doctors. They're committed to breaking down stigmas and addressing issues many of us women experience, like hormone health, vaginal health, menopause, and more.
When taken daily, 2 capsules a day, Euro delivers benefits within 8 weeks. Many even see results sooner. For so many of us, women's health can be a really vulnerable thing. But with O Positive, it helps women feel confident and empowered so that they can live their best lives.
Take proactive care of your health and head to opositive.com/FFG or enter code FFG at checkout for 25% off your first purchase. That's opositiv.com/FFG for 25% off. Now, before we go off about how insane this signet is, We just took a quick break, and Nicole so kindly reminded me that I forgot to tell her what the word she can't say is at the top of this episode.
So Lexi does not have precognition, is what you're saying. You did not have the precognition signet.
No, I did not. And this is our last Onyx Storm episode, and I keep forgetting at the beginning of every single episode for the last 5 weeks. So anyway, Nicole, for the second half of this episode, if you say the word brother, you are going to have to do 1 hour of babysitting for me. Thank you so much for catching that before we go through all of our brother possibilities. Back to Aric's signet, though. With the weight of responsibility and the power that will come with it, I'm not surprised Aric has been hiding it, considering how much he does not want to be in the spotlight. Remember back in Fourth Wing when Jack said, quote, "I'm not the one who thinks precognition is a thing." This signet is unheard of, and it's important for us to be aware of these unheard of signets manifesting for this generation. Take Violet with her dreamwalking, and Imogen with her stone/rock/earth bending. History is being shaped by this generation, and very powerful signets, both rare and unheard of, are making an appearance. And I don't think this is an accident at all, as the universe, the gods, whatever the greater magical power is, ensures they manifest these signets where magic likes all things in balance.
This whole strike in the dark moment from Aric, I also can't help but think about the moment from Xaden, where he's teaching, the first signet sparring class, and him and Violet are in the dark, and he says, strike. Strike in the darkness, indeed. She's doing now what she couldn't risk in the beginning of the book when Xaden, on the signet sparring challenge mat, made the entire thing engulfed in shadows, and he told her, let's see how well you do in the dark. It was all setting up for this moment, and it turns out she'll do pretty well.
So, strike with the ceremonial dagger, which is made of stone from Dune's temple. Wield Dune's wrath, because only Violet, who is touched by Dune, can do so against Theophony. And, of course, in the darkness, which Xaden here provides with his ASIM leveling up shadows. Now is your moment, Vi!
So Violet unsheathes the marble dagger, releases a bolt of lightning, and holds it, looking around for her opponent. Theophony is stumbling around, and thanks to Xaden's shadows shoving her, as we'll find out in his POV chapter, then she whirls towards Violet, and she attempts to dive to the left to avoid the strike, but Theophony smacks into an invisible wall. Quote, a wall that snarls. Welcome back, everyone's favorite teenage dragon. Andarna leaving was not on my bingo card, but Andarna coming back was definitely not on my bingo card in the same book. Like so many of us reading this moment, seeing Andarna's scales shimmer to the same silver blue as Violet's strike, it causes Violet's thrumming heartbeat to suddenly stabilize. This is when you and I were just weeping uncontrollably.
With Andarna's return comes a million questions too. Like, what are you doing here? Where has she been? What brings her back? It's been over a week since her and Violet's bond was broken. Something like 10-ish days since she departed with Leothin, though we don't have an exact timeline. Knowing that Andarna's wing makes it difficult for her to fly long distances, it seems unlikely she made it all the way to the Irid's Den around the Isles and then flew back for Violet. Not completely impossible, but unlikely. There is a theory that time travel is the answer to this question, where Andarna has actually been gone for years, but because of the Irid magic or her own, she comes back and it's only been days, when really for her, it has indeed been years and she's been with the Irids all this time. For her. We know so little about the Irids, their magic, and their den that this isn't impossible by any means. But I will say I'm personally hesitant to jump on the time travel theory because time manipulation back in Fourth Wing seemed so unique and special, and I feel like we had that moment already. So then there's the possibility that Andarna and Leothin were on their way to the Irid's Den, and something made Andarna change her mind and go back. Perhaps it was feeling something with Violet through the bond when she thought it was severed, and it helped her realize she wants to choose Violet instead because of how deep their bond truly does go. Or maybe she saw something with the Venin where she felt like she couldn't leave Violet and her loved ones to fight this fight on their own. Like when they were flying over and they saw something going on with the Venin, and it really made her realize, like, I can't leave everybody to this.
Along that similar line of thinking, the more and more we talk about this, the more I'm convinced that Leothin and Andarna didn't leave the continent at all. So playing off that and what you were just saying, what if Leothin wanted Andarna to train in the Irid's ways, for instance, for a little bit before bringing her back to the Irid Den, so that by the time he did bring her back to the Irid Den, they'd be more likely to accept her. So they spent roughly 10 days, like traipsing across the continent in their hidden form. Or maybe Andarna tried to convince him to stay on the continent, and through traveling to different places, Leothin saw the threat of the Venin firsthand. One of the big arguments that Andarna had on the unnamed isle when we first met the Irids was, you preach peace while only knowing its privilege. This would be now Leothin getting to see firsthand what this threat is and how it is so very real. So when Andarna said she needed to return to Violet, probably after she felt Violet's signet being used when Violet was dreamwalking, but just a few hours earlier, Andarna then went to Drathis, and maybe even Leothin went back to the Irids to convince them to come to the people's aid. It would be a little bit tie things up with a bow than we're used to with Rebecca Yarros' stories, especially for a plot this big, but I could see it.
I could too, definitely. Especially with him seeing it firsthand. Yep. Theophony is so happy to see Andarna. Her red eyes are full of wonder. She reaches out to touch Andarna, whispering Irid in reverence. Wait, that's bad. You can't put your hands on Andarna. So, holding her lightning bolt to light the way, and while Theophony is distracted by Andarna's presence, Violet lunges toward Theophony. She drives Dune's marble dagger straight into her heart. And blood! There's blood! The maven bleeds! How?
Blood?
Quote, you are never just Venin. Dune is a wrathful goddess to high priestesses who turn their backs on her. And before Theophony can scream, she desiccates.
Goodbye, Theophony! You sucked, but we also weirdly loved you. You died with so many secrets.
Secrets die with the people who keep them!
And we're infuriated that you weren't alive to tell us more about them. You were gone too soon, but again, you also sucked. But we also loved how much you sucked.
But really, it is a tale as old as time that the villain's demise is what initially drew them to power.
No.
Theophony wanted to be a god, so she forsake being a high priestess of Dune, and Dune punished her with her wrath. It's one of those plot lines that we never could have imagined back in Iron Flame, and that's what I love about it. New elements, new magic at play. It keeps us on our toes.
With Theophony now desiccated and dead, Violet releases the bolt of lightning she was holding and surrenders to her near burnout, but not before Andarna whispers Violet into her mind. This right here. There was no reconnecting of their bond. So Andarna was just able to suddenly talk into Violet's mind again. This is all the proof I needed that the bond was not fully severed between them, because there was no reconnection moment between Violet and Andarna right now. Andarna just immediately spoke back into her mind.
So hold on there, because when the bond first happened at Threshing, there was no special moment for Violet recognizing the bond.
But I figured with how familiar she is with a bond now, she would suddenly feel that pathway open.
Yep. So technically, she could have reforged the bond, and that happened when she speaks into her mind here. Although I do agree that the bond was never truly severed, just like 99% severed.
As Rebecca Yarros loves to do with these Empyrean books, we get our one and only Xaden POV chapter, which opens in a hidden, sun-soaked canyon south of Drathis, where Xaden has been summoned against his will to Berwyn, and Sigale has been captured, which we heard from the roaring down the bond in Violet's previous chapter. I want to talk about this summoning for a second, though, because we know from Riddick and the research that he was doing that at the ASIM level, that is when they are physically unable to deny the call of a sage. But Xaden's not an ASIM yet. He's still an initiate. Which brings me to an odd thing that Theophony says actually in chapter 10, when she's trying to convince Violet to let her be her teacher and not Berwyn. She says, quote, besides the fact that he's subpar and you'd be chained to him, powerless to resist his orders, powerless to resist his orders. So either the text that Riddick had was wrong and it wasn't ASIM level and instead it's initiate 2, or what if Berwyn has this extra, I'm going to call it persuasive magic, but I really don't know if that's the right word, where he literally, I'll say, goes into someone's mind and alters their decisions. And he was able to just do that with Xaden here, like he does also in Xaden's dreams. So could this be part of the other 90% of Violet's second signet? And this could be why she's so dangerous.
I guess I figured for all intents and purposes, Theophony is not speaking only about it being an initiate, because anyone who turns Venin will eventually progress, all while being chained to the same sage. So I took it as the main takeaway is that initiates and ASIM are powerless to resist their sage's orders, especially when they're in proximity. Like here with Berwyn finally making his reappearance, and this is when Xaden is summoned to him. Versus other times he's been beyond the wards and not been summoned because Berwyn wasn't physically nearby.
So you think that Riddick's information was just wrong and it's not just ASIMs, it's also initiates too?
Yes.
Interesting. Because this is such a Rebecca Yarros shit to do, where it's like, rather than, it's that question of, is this an unreliable narrator moment, or I guess it would be unreliable history text moment, or is this extra layer of Venenism that we, of course, don't know? Going back to my theory, if Berwyn does have this extra, I'll call it persuasive magic, it would also explain why Xaden can't so much as lift a blade to him, and why he says the bond between them, quote, is the kind that should never even exist.
But I think that goes for any sage or maven, the mentor and their mentee.
I think that this is something different and more about Berwyn's magic. Because again, I go back to his dreams. And in his dreams, Berwyn is trying to convince him. He's talking to him about these different things. He's trying to get him to channel more. He's trying to da-da-da-da-da. So what if in real life he also has that extra, again, I'm going to call it persuasive, but I think there's a better word for it.
Interesting.
Not quite fun theory, but that's
it's
cute,
interesting.
Nicole. Okay,
interesting.
Cool. Despite how all this works, there is one thing for sure. Berwyn's fucking alive.
What?
I know!
Nobody guessed it!
No way! After months of believing him to be dead, you sweet summer child, Xaden.
I know, right?
Pushed him into the ravine. All Berwyn has is a stupid scar.
But being summoned by his sage who was supposed to be dead is not the only reveal in Xaden's chapter POV. Quote, and now that my sage has another sibling he can use against me, I'm screwed. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time to talk about the new... Who is it, Nicole?
A sibling.
You are
of the
not
male
allowed
variety.
to change any of these in the outline. Don't you fucking dare!
I had the plan to go in and change all the words to uppercase so that it was a nice little nod to me, but I will not.
Before we list off the top brother contenders, let's list off what we know about this new brother. Number 1, he has watched Xaden stumble and fall over the last 5 months. Quote, how could he willingly walk the path I've fought like hell to leave? The only 2 men who we know for a fact have watched Xaden struggle with being a Venin for the past 5 months are Bodhi and Garrick. Or it has to be someone who secretly knew, and Xaden knew that they knew, but never shared it with Violet. Or, this is more of a stretch, but maybe even someone who later learned he is a Venin for these past 5 months and is now aware of how he has struggled with it for the past 5 months.
We can infer that this new kin is someone who has an unconscious dragon lying on the valley beyond the canyon, and this Venin sibling is guarded by 7 wyvern.
Which makes the new brother a writer who was present for this battle.
Number 3, it is someone who Xaden cares enough about that Berwyn knows he has leverage on him by using him. And Xaden desperately does not want this male sibling to stumble down the same path.
Number 4, along these same lines, it is the last person Xaden would have expected to turn. So with these 2 facts in mind, we can infer this is someone Xaden knows well and someone he cares about. Real quick, there has been some confusion that the new brother is someone who is supposed to be dead. However, based on the rest of the page and context clues, he's got to be talking about Berwyn. Berwyn was supposed to be dead because Xaden threw him into the ravine at the end of Iron Flame, and Xaden can't kill Berwyn because there is Venin mentor and people bond between them. The next bit of information we have about the identity of this new brother is from our Denver interview with Rebecca Yarros. When we asked what we should pay attention to if we want to figure out who the new brother is, she very surprisingly answered us and said, quote, I would pay attention to who's missing at the end. I would pay attention to someone who feels like whatever they have been given is not enough, which is always the case when you turn Venin. When you turn Venin, it's always because you need to reach for power beyond your own. You weren't given enough power. Oh, okay, Rebecca, thank you so much for that useful insight. However, her phrasing of who's missing at the end can be interpreted a few different ways. At the end of the book, like Violet's chapter 12 hours later. At the end of the battle, like in Imogen's chapter. At the end of Xaden's chapter, where he observes several people as his shadows consume the city. Nicole and I have always interpreted this as the end of the book, meaning Violet's chapter. but I do acknowledge that is our assumption.
Okay, pause. Before we get carried away with the new sibling debate, let's take one last break to tell you about Chime. Everything feels more expensive now. Have we talked about dragon eggs recently? But the last thing we want to do is rack up credit card debt just to get those everyday essential items. There's a better way. You can build credit with money you set aside and avoid interest or expensive debt with Chime's Credit Builder card. It's a secured credit card with no credit check or minimum deposit required.
Our family is being very mindful of our credit right now because we really want to buy a house in the near future. And so that is definitely top of mind for us. Credit can just be so important for any big purchase in your future.
Chime's Credit Builder Visa credit card makes it easy to keep your financial life just a little bit more convenient. With SpotMe, you can overdraft up to $200 without fees when you set up qualifying credit deposits. Just set up qualifying credit deposits, sign up for SpotMe, and Chime will spot you up to $200 when you exceed your balance. Plus, you can access 50,000 fee-free ATMs. Easily find one near you with the Chime app.
Turn your everyday purchases and on-time payments into steps toward your financial goals with Chime's secured Credit Builder Visa credit card. Get started today at chime.com/fantasyfangirl. That's chime.com/fantasyfangirl. Chime feels like progress.
The Chime Credit Builder Visa credit card is issued by the Bancorp Bank N.A. or Stride Bank N.A. SpotMe eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Chime checking account required to apply. Out-of-network ATM withdrawal and OTC advance fees may apply. Timing depends on submission of payment file. Late payments may negatively impact your credit score. Results may vary. Go to chime.com/disclosures for details.
So let's talk about who this new brother could be. Because surprise, the answer is not obvious with pros and cons for each contender.
Behind new sibling door number 1, we have Bodhi, who we have not been quiet about how we believe Bodhi lines up perfectly with the new relative with all things that Rebecca Yarros has said. He's missing at the end, or at least he's not mentioned, which feels very on brand for Bodhi. He definitely fits the bill as someone who feels like they've not been given enough, as we pointed out ad nauseum on this deep dive. Some highlights include Violet thinks about how Bodhi should have been the first person they thought of in the battle brief, and he was definitely not. And of course, him and Theophony standoff last episode where she taunts him for not being as powerful as Xaden, and then his power literally does not even work on her. I could absolutely see him turning because he knows his signet is always supposed to be the balance. And if he can't use that signet on Venin, I see him going Venin, believing that it's finally what gets it so that he's able to use his signet on them. So he's almost looking at this is the only way to defeat them in the end.
Plus, Bodhi was not wanting to graduate from Basgaith because he felt he would be more useful in the war. And he doesn't want to be Duke in Xaden's place. He wants to follow Xaden, not take over. So turning Venin would certainly put him on the same path as his cousin and take away the option to continue school and become Duke like Xaden has been pushing on him.
We'll never forget when Rebecca was asked what would every character order at a bar, and Xaden would order a beer, and then Bodhi would order a beer because Xaden is ordering a beer. Like, that just immediately screams, oh, let me go down the same path you are, because you're basically my older sibling. Bodhi also, as far as we know, does not have a second signet. This could be the other option for writers who bond their ancestors' dragon, manifesting, and that is going mad. He could literally be going mad believing that this is the best option. Again, like what I was saying earlier. So it's like logical madness, almost. Outside of him fitting the character mold of the Venin sibling, having motivation, etc., there are also how many mentions in books 1 and 2 about the similarities between Xaden and Bodhi and how they could be more than cousins. Plus, last episode when Theophony asked for that sibling of the male variety, and they were like, oh, it's Bodhi. These sibling mentions and the male sibling variety, not cousin mentions, could all be foreshadowing for him being this Venin sibling. Corey from EmpyreanWriters.com also pointed out that in Chapter 11's epigraph in Iron Flame, from recovered correspondence of Xaden Ryerson to Violet Sorrengail, he says, quote,
you gotta quote it, Nicole. It's the book.
He says a form of, after Liam, Bodhi was the closest thing he had to kin, or a sibling. But Bodhi was, quote, perpetually lagging a step behind. Check and check. Ha! Suck it, Lexi. Then, in Imogen's chapter, Cure is looking rough, having been hurt by a wyvern, and Bodhi and Cure are struggling quite a bit in that moment. Then, in Xaden's chapter, this new sibling's dragon is unconscious. It would absolutely make sense for Cure to be the unconscious dragon with injuries, considering he's the only dragon we know of who's severely injured like this.
And saving his dragon could have been another reason that Bodhi turned, again, mirroring like what Xaden does. Maybe not knowing it in that moment, but just more of those parallels between how similar they are. Yeah.
Lastly, if Bodhi was still totally 100% totally fine just throwing up on the grass, why would Xaden insist on marrying Violet right after he goes bananas in a few minutes, making her the Duchess of Tyrrendor at the end? Why not rely on plan A with Bodhi stepping into his dukeship? Now, it is never stated on the page that Violet is the new Duchess of Tyrrendor. I want to be clear on that. So Bodhi could have taken over and Violet's just second in command or just married to Xaden, but it makes a lot more sense for Xaden's line of thinking to be, let me marry her so that she can be the one in power, so that Navarre, specifically King Tari, isn't just rising up whoever the fuck.
But of course, there is one gigantic hiccup to Bodhi being the new possible brother. And that big hiccup is the assumed timeline of this battle and where Bodhi is last seen. Like I've been saying, it is strongly implied that Imogen's chapter 63 and Xaden's chapter 65 overlap. And right before Imogen looks up to the sky and it starts darkening, assumably with Xaden's shadows, she observes how, quote, Bodhi is on his hands and knees across the town square, retching. It would be damn near impossible for Bodhi to be that new brother in the Southern Canyon with Xaden and Berwyn when minutes beforehand, Bodhi's in not so good shape in the city. Bodhi makes such perfect sense as the new brother, except for this. Which leaves me thinking two things. Number one, the new brother is not Bodhi, and he's supposed to be the red herring, the seemingly obvious choice if you don't pick up on the battle timeline. Or number two, the chapter timeline is actually the red herring, and there's an explanation for how he's in this town square and then in the canyon shortly afterward. He could be looking for Xaden, or right here in the town square is when he turns and then he's summoned to Berwyn too, or something. I don't know. Something could be explained here.
Now, there is mention that he's in the valley. Could there be a, like, the brother...
Yes!
Fuck.
Yes! Hour of babysitting!
Fine, I'll just play Baldur's Gate with them like I did yesterday. Now, hold on, because there is some wording here that I think can actually be a workaround. Xaden says that he glances past Sigale, Berwyn, his, the venom that are surrounding Berwyn, to the new sibling in the valley. And then when Violet is looking at the city of Drathis, she notes how it is in the valley. So I think that this could just be a different wording for where Drathis is. And Xaden is literally looking into the valley, and that's where he sees this new sibling. And then it could still be Bodhi.
Yes, that would be some serious word
Farsight.
choices from Rebecca, but I definitely see where you're coming from. Yes.
It is a big hiccup, but I think I am willing to die on this hill. Because it is, in my opinion, it's the only kin who makes sense character development-wise.
I agree with you there.
Yeah. Moving on to this venom male sibling door number 2, it is Garrick. So the most obvious point, in my opinion, for Garrick is when Rebecca Yarros said, pay attention to who is missing at the end. And in the very last chapter, the only named character who is missing at the end of this book, other than Xaden, is Lieutenant Tavis, aka Garrick. But that feels way too on the nose for Rebecca Yarros to just give us, because she said that and I literally heard in the echoes of the audience, Garrick, and I was like, it feels too obvious. Now, Garrick does fit the bill as someone who has watched what Xaden has gone through these past 5 months, considering he knew, the same night that Xaden turned venom. Also, Xaden says that this new kin is the last person he'd expect to turn. After Garrick was frustrated and Xaden's direct walkture this whole book. If Garrick has been doing that for 5 months, Garrick would absolutely qualify as the last person, given that he's one of Xaden's closest people, and he's seen Xaden's very much not himself moments to the point where he's even warned Violet about it. And in the battle, Garrick is super burned out. And in Imogen's chapter, he says he doesn't have enough power because he walked too much. He says, quote, I can't walk again. Even if I made it to Eratia, I'd never be strong enough to get back. So I'd better find some fucking way to do something. This might be the point of him realizing he's not powerful enough and needs more, but personally, I saw this more as him accepting his limits and instead going into warrior mode, wanting to freaking fight something because he can't walk again.
I absolutely agree. And it also does fit for someone who needs more power, like you were saying. And I could see Garrick turning as his attempt to try to get more power, and that's his way of finding some fucking way to do something.
Corey, in that same article from EmpyreanWriters.com, mentions also if you look up the symbolism behind rusted buckets, wow, I did not think I'd go here this episode, you might find things like forgotten potential, broken promises, emotional burdens. Personally, I didn't find any of this when I was doing my symbolism search and prep for that episode, but I easily could have missed it. Corey goes on to mention that in the final battle, Garrick is completely drained. He's almost like an empty bucket. Again, going back to what we were saying, between the forgotten potential and then also this empty bucket feeling, that could be a one-to-one, correlation.
And if Imogen's chapter 63 does indeed overlap with Xaden's, this would put Garrick in the city when the new brother is in the canyon, or the valley, I suppose here. However, Garrick probably has enough power to get to the southern canyon in one step. So this same argument that we have for Bodhi is not nearly as strong as it is with Garrick.
The main reason I have a really hard time getting behind Garrick as the new sibling is because he just does not fit the bill as someone who feels like they're never enough. He's cocky. He's got swagger. He has an extremely powerful second signet. He's included on missions. Versus, again, going back to Bodhi, who is always the second to Xaden.
Yep. And this right here is the only reason I'm not convinced it's Garrick. Yeah. Because he can check every other box except for not feeling like he's enough. He knows he doesn't have enough power right now. But Rebecca's saying, quote, I would pay attention to someone who feels like whatever they have been given is not enough. That doesn't fit Garrick as a whole. When we're examining who's where and when in this chaotic timeline, Aric makes the most sense as the new Venin brother. Last we knew of his location, Aric was arriving from the south to bring the Zelna advance party here. And that's the last we hear about him in the book. Talk about someone who could be missing at the end. Aric could go into the southern canyon instead of into battle, or behind the wards after completing his rogue mission. Like, maybe the Venin captured his dragon and that's what made him turn. So that checks out better than anyone else, including Bodhi and Garrick, if chapters 63 and 65 overlap. But then there's the fact that this new brother watched Xaden struggle being Venin for the past 5 months. And as far as Violet, and therefore the reader knows, Aric is not aware of Xaden turning Venin. However, Aric's signet is precognition, and it manifested before Quest Squad. So it is quite possible that Aric learned from his signet that Xaden is Venin. I'm not sure when this means Xaden would have found out that Aric knows he's Venin, because that doesn't seem like something he would keep from Violet. But maybe he is a powerful intrinsic, so it's highly likely Xaden knew about Aric's precognition signet before Violet figured it out on her own. Xaden also refers to Aric and Deverelli as someone he has, quote, complicated loyalty toward. Maybe he already knows that Aric knows he's Venin. There's also the possibility that Aric turns Venin because he knows it is the only way to save the continent and defeat the Venin eventually. He is a character who feels a sense of responsibility to save everyone, and he's someone who will do whatever it takes to do that. Additionally, Aric fits the bill as someone Xaden would be shocked to turn Venin. Aric has been steadfast in his fight against Venin, like another nobility figure, Xaden. He is the Kingdom of Navarre's hope for a better future, as Xaden points out to him when they're in Umbriel and Aric is wanting to participate in the challenge. Xaden believes Aric is too important to turn, except we cannot forget what Rebecca told us about how the one who turned doesn't feel like he's been given enough. So here's the same argument as we have for Garrick. Aric rejects the idea of leading as a nobility, and he has not told anyone about his very powerful signet because, if I'm not mistaken, he doesn't want the spotlight shined on him, which means Aric doesn't seem to feel like he is not enough or isn't powerful enough. So the same issue we have with Garrick being the brother, Aric doesn't seem to fit this checkbox here.
Let's tap into another possibility, and that is Dain. Not to squish this one right off the bat, but I'm going to. When Xaden's shadows are rushing towards the city, he sees Dain and Kath, who are backed into a corner by a wyvern. At this point, the sibling is already unconscious, the dragon is unconscious, so this one's automatically off the table. Shout out to my lovely friend Shelby, who is convinced that Dain is the kin. I love you, girl. Sorry to crush your hopes and dreams.
Then we have Sawyer or Reddick. They were last known to be protecting the pass under Rhee's leadership in her POV Chapter 61. This is northwest of the city and some miles from the Southern Canyon, where Xaden and his new brother end up. But they are among the select few not accounted for after Xaden is summoned, especially if Imogen's POV Chapter 63 ending overlaps with the same timeline as Xaden's Chapter 65. Okay, but what about Xaden's hint when he thinks, quote, choose this after watching me stumble and fall over the past 5 months? Both Sawyer and Reddick have known about Xaden and his struggle for a little while, and they now know he has been struggling with it since December, after Violet filled them in on what's been happening with Xaden during these months. It doesn't quite fit the checkbox too well, but we're going to entertain it because it could be interpreted this way just enough. For Sawyer, he fulfills the feeling like he's not enough, not only with his leg, but also being a repeat. We've talked about this a lot with his character's struggles of feeling worthy throughout the deep dive. However, I just don't see it being Sawyer because Xaden does not have a close relationship with him. Like his relationship with the new brother is inferred from his POV. So then let's look at Riddick, who has actually been with Xaden quite a bit over the past 5 months, being on Quest Squad together, so maybe Xaden cares a little bit more about him. Plus, Riddick was appalled by learning that Xaden was Venin, so I could see Xaden feeling betrayed by Riddick after their conversation on the Minor Isle. Like, Riddick really could be the last person Xaden thinks would turn Venin. And Riddick does get pissed that people don't give him enough credit, and he has to work extra hard to be taken seriously. That could be his way of not feeling like he's enough, though with all the beautiful character development we got from Riddick this book, that would be an extra twist to the knife if he's the new brother. And I don't know. I guess I'll say this. I would be extremely surprised if Riddick's arc goes in the Venin direction.
Same. Finally, behind the last door is Brennan. We know from the Fables of the Baron that there is one sibling who pulled from the source and turned Venin. And many, many, many people believe that the Sorrengail siblings are going to echo the tale in the Fables of the Baron. And Brennan is the one who will go Venin of the 3. As far as we know, Brennan might not have known Xaden was Venin right when it happened, but he did find out later, and together they worked for a while to try and cure him. So I think that is enough to fit the bill of he's watched me struggle, they're really close, yada yada. The last time we saw Brennan, him and Marb were up the Madaro Pass mending Tiny and continuing to mend Mira. Considering the battle timeline, it's not out of the question that he could have made it down to the valley. However, the one major hiccup that I have with this is that Rebecca Yarros said pay attention to who's missing at the end. And we see Brennan talking about who's missing, but he's not of the missing. He's very much there. And I'm not going to lie, if it weren't for that, Brennan would make a lot of sense. But for that reason, I don't know if I can get behind it.
I agree. Again, I know that there is some debate about the interpretation of who is missing when at what ending. But when I think of the end, I think of the end and how people are literally missing. And so I do think that whoever did turn is among those 4 remaining people missing, and we only know who 2 others are right now. Yeah.
You know who always is the one who's never mentioned but should be on the list of things who's mentioned? Bodhi.
So while I do absolutely agree with you, I have to say I love the theory going around that Berwyn is actually Naolin, and Brennan is now the new brother with Naolin as his sage. Berwyn could be Naolin's last name, or he could have changed it. I don't know. I personally think Berwyn is his own character, and we have more to learn about Naolin, but that's a fun theory. And I say that as an actually good fun theory, not my usual kind of fun theory. Xaden is in a tough position right now. Not only does he have a new brother he does not want to abandon, no matter how shocked he is that this mysterious person turned Venin, but Sagail has been wounded and ensnared, with blood dripping in her scales as super thick ropes bind her. There is a dark wielder guarding Sagail near her tail, with fingers splayed threaten draining her. Xaden is beside himself with fury that his dragon has been captured and injured. Quote, "She was the first to choose me, to elevate me above all others, the first to see every ugly side of me and accept it all. And Xaden is ready to kill everyone in this canyon before she is harmed anymore. But Sagail exerted too much of her own power defending the city for him to be able to strongly wield his shadows right now, which only leaves him with one option of retrieving power to ensure her safety. Because his first girl doesn't deserve this. Although she's like, don't you dare, stay strong, buddy, you haven't given in to the sage yet and you won't now."
But changing gears a little, because with a "this is not what we agreed to" in regards to his own netted dragon, it is finally revealed that Panchchek the fucking pancake has been selling them out to Berwyn for who knows how long. And from the sounds of it, he either just learned how to go Venin, given that Berwyn mentions that Panchchek asked for power and he provided it, or Panchchek has been Venin for a minute. But because Panchchek would have had to have been an initiate, Xaden would have been able to sense him. So I think that Panchchek just turned here.
That definitely makes sense. I don't know, though. The way Berwyn is talking to Panchchek, if he was showing him how to turn Venin, You'd think he would be talking to Panchchek about replacing power when his dragon dies versus making this an example for Xaden. And now that he has another son, Panchchek is disposable. I'm sticking to my theory that Panchchek is not Venin, but he had some deal with the Venin to help them and become more powerful in his status in his own right.
I would bet money that Panchchek learned about Berwin and made these deals with him through Berwin going into Panchchek's dreams. Like, that's how I see them having to start making deals and stuff.
I could see that, but also he's been talking to Theophony too.
That is not confirmed.
You're right. We do not for sure know that, but yeah.
This reveal was absolutely a surprise at the time. We just never even thought about Panchchek. But when you look back through Fourth Wing, it makes so much sense, especially given that when we're first introduced to Panchchek, Tara shares that he feels like this is just a stepping stone job for him, meaning Commandant of the Riders Quadrant, whereas Panchchek would eventually want Lilith's job and then Melgren's job, aka he's a power-hungry Slytherin. I bet when Daddy Atos was promoted to Lilith's position, that was when Berwin started talking about, wanting to pull from the source and, getting more information and wanting more power, because he's like, well, fuck, if I'm not going to be this person, because Daddy Atos, as far as he knows, is going to have that position for a while. God, I hope not. But that was his last chance. So because this fucker sucks a lot, we shed no tears for him when Berwin takes his alloy-hilted dagger and stabs it between Panchchek's green dragon's scales. But wait! Because the dragon desiccates, just like the Venin do when impacted with the alloy-hilted dagger. What the fuck? That's new!
This is a horrifying revelation that alloy-hilted daggers can kill and desiccate dragons, especially for Xaden, who sees what Berwin is threatening to do to Sigale next as his way of forcing Xaden to reach for power to stay alive and replace the loss of power with Sigale's death. Remember how at the end of Iron Flame and Jack killed his dragon? He was starting to die until he channeled from stone and drained to replace the power he lost from his dragon. So when you're Venin, at least an initiate, your life is still tethered to your dragons. So if your dragon dies, you have to immediately replace that missing power to stay alive. That's why we have a big question mark next to Panchchek now. With his dragon dead, is he dead? Or did he reach for power and is indeed a Venin now? If I had to guess, I think he's dead. Berwin doesn't really think he's useful anymore now that he has Xaden and his brother and no more need for Jack, which was Panchchek's only leverage against Berwin. You think Panchchek is still alive?
Until it is confirmed a dead body on the page.
That is a good point. Yes, that is a good point.
It would make sense storytelling-wise with what you're saying that he would be dead. But I feel like if he was dead, we would have gotten it confirmed on the page through Xaden's POV as his shadows were going across the canyon into the valley.
That's true. But back to finding out that dragons can be killed with an alloy-hilted dagger. The Venin have 6 crates of alloy-hilted daggers from their attack on Seneva. This is bad. Dragons are extremely difficult to kill, and here we have a very effective way for the enemy to kill them. This actually reminds me of what Xaden says to Violet in Iron Flame when she asks if the alloy has always been placed in daggers, and Xaden says, quote, "No, that started right before the rebellion. My guess is Melgren had a vision of how an upcoming battle is going to go, and these were central to his victory." This would be delicious foreshadowing if Melgren was Venin, and these alloy-hilted daggers were a way to actually help the Venin. But I also realize how many holes are in that theory with Melgren being Venin and the alloy-hilted daggers definitely still killing Venin most of all. And then of course how he's bonded to Coda. I still can't forget that line though. It really does stand out to me when I'm thinking about all these new possibilities with alloy-hilted daggers. In any case, I think the next few books will have this be a threat to the dragons, and we'll unfortunately see it in action in a future battle, like a Venin jumping onto a dragon and stabbing it, and the poor dragon becoming a husk right there in the sky. Oh my god, I hate even saying all this. Or even finding a way to transfer the alloy into crossbolts, and that would be extra terrifying.
Berwin is not done with his fuckery though, because he then turns to Sigale with every intention of using the alloy dagger on her. And that's when we get the quote, "I don't just skate over the ice, I become it." Who's ready for our longest ice watch, baby, to date? Xaden has been skating on the ice, willingly cutting his emotions away so he can be the weapon that Sigale needs him to be desperately right now. He was already primed to go full ice baby. But with the threat of Sigale's life, the one who literally anchors his existence, that's what makes him give himself fully to the ice and pull. It is so heartbreakingly beautifully poetic that Xaden turned for Violet, but the fear of losing Sigale is what tips him over the edge like this. Sigale chose him during threshing, having already bonded and known his grandfather. She was with him when he manifested shadows, and then again when he manifested his intensive abilities, and helped him keep his shit together through it all. She was also with him every step of the way through Basgiath as he did the impossible and rose through the ranks despite his last name and status as a marked one.
She was a big factor in helping him get that power, both in status and in magic, that have people scared of him and respecting him.
She's been his constant for years, and he truly, truly loves her. The thought of losing Sigale is impossible. So Xaden splays his hand to the ground, throwing his daggers into the air as he falls to one knee and erupts into pure darkness. Quote, thick as tar and black as ink, blacking out the afternoon sun and turning the space pitch black. Shadows helping him by planting his alloy-hilted daggers that he threw into the air into the two Venom who were Berwyn's lackeys. First off, that's just cool. That's like, I know this sucks, but that's a really cool move. His shadows drag Berwyn from Sigale, knocking him out along with his new sibling.
His shadows shred through Sigale's net and destroy the wyvern guarding the canyon.
But with these little victories come a huge cost because, like pieces of ash blowing away from a fire pit, Xaden feels his soul fall away moment by moment. And we get the quote, I am no longer on the ice. I am the ice. With everyone either unconscious or dead or Panchchek, who's one of the two, it's time to stop, right, Xaden? You're done. Alas, the answer is no, because there's still a city to save. So tunneling deeper into the source magic, Xaden's darkness finds all the identical heartbeats that match the wyvern and kill them, ripping their onyx runestone free. Again, I know that this is bad, but this is so badass.
Time for our last battle checkpoint, which may or may not overlap with the one from Imogen's chapter. Xaden's shadows tear the heart out of the wyvern that has Dane and his dragon Kath cornered in the city. The shadows rush over Imogen as she looks up to the sky, hence why it seems like these chapters overlap. His shadows go all the way to Madara Pass, where they take down every single wyvern threatening the civilians' safety. No mention of the dragons or griffins, though, so can't say anything about the characters supposed to be there. His shadows knock Theophony to the ground as she and Violet are going up against each other. They knock his new brother and Berwyn unconscious. And all in all, two people notably absent from his POV through all of this are Bodhi and Garrick, leaving the big question, are they accountable from Imogen's chapter battle checkpoint, considering this does seem to overlap?
Xaden can feel the last few pieces of his soul urging to leave his body, but he holds onto them with teeth and claw. I love how his inner dialogue is already starting to change as his soul leaves more and more. There's this really interesting line about how his shadows surge north. Quote, I stream up the cliffside, fall back at the magic that burns to the touch. Ah, these are the Aretian wards at the top of the cliffs where everyone is headed for safety. But then the cracking of the cold comes with Violet's quote, I love you. And in that crack in the ice, a piece of warmth wedges itself in, locking it into place and sealing it shut with more ice, meaning that Xaden cannot get to that little piece of warmth within him as much as he tries to cling on to it, but it's lodged within him.
His love for her is the only thing that still keeps him human. But along with this emotion is, quote, fire of pure power burning at the feeling's edges. And I understand this as his love for her helping him recognize that if he takes any more, he'll completely lose himself.
Yeah, same. Xaden knows that if he takes any more magic from the earth, the final locked away piece will float away with the other pieces of his soul. So he pulls away and we get this heartbreaking line, quote, I've never felt so strong and so defeated at the same time. Xaden.
There's a passage that has me raising my eyebrows as Xaden walks over Berwyn's unconscious body as he thinks about wishing he could kill Berwyn. Quote, I wonder how many initiates feel the same about their sage. At least one that I know of. But beyond the physical impossibility of it, he has something I need. Number one, at least one that he knows of. Is Xaden talking about himself? Or the new brother? Or someone else?
He could have read the new sibling's thoughts. The absolutely chaotic answer would be Jack fucking Barlow, but I don't see Jack fucking Barlow going against Berwyn.
Yeah.
I don't think he's talking about himself, but
right?
He could be.
That just stood out to me, yeah. And then the other part of this is number two, Berwin has something Xaden needs. How have I missed this on all my other rereads?
Same.
What does Xaden need from Berwin? Besides, not being chained to him, does this mean, though, that Xaden will indeed have to be near Berwin and get what he needs, like have to retrieve something? Is this something he needs his new brother? Or could it be information? Like, again, going back to what Theophony was saying and dangling in front of Violet about how she has the answers, could Berwin possibly have the answers that Xaden needs?
So, okay, along those same lines, it could be something around the cure.
Yep.
It could be some information about the war that Xaden feels like he needs to win it. It could be something about this him, whoever this big bad him is. Is this something to do with Violet's second signet, which we think that Berwin also has that capability? Is it also leading him straight to the Venom Den? Is that what Xaden's wanting? Again, it doesn't fully line up, but maybe. It could be the brother. Like, the thing that he needs is, because if the brother is tethered to Berwin, then yeah, that would count. My crack theory is that Naolan is also on Berwin's team, and Xaden wants Naolan back on their side. He would have known Naolan if Naolan was Eurasian, which we do believe he was, if he put the rune on Brennan. We know runes are heavily associated with Tyrandor, so he would have known Naolan if that was the case. So maybe he wants Naolan for reasons. Going back to what you were saying earlier about him going into ASIM territory, there is some speculation that Xaden skipped right over ASIM and went straight to Sage level.
Oh.
I'm not going to dismiss this possibility. After yanking his hand off the ground, he never says, I am an ASIM. He only says, I am no longer an initiate. He also never says the words, my Sage, and they're never on the page, although it is quite implied when he mentions how he thought he'd kill Berwin, but then he wonders how many other initiates feel the same about their Sage. The only thing he does say, like I said, is that he's no longer initiate, and we know that his red veins are branching from his eyes like Violet's lightning. We know from Venom, a compendium, in the chapter 47 epigraph of Iron Flame, that Asim's eyes vary in degrees of red, and the veins only distend when they're riled. I would definitely say Xaden is riled right now, that's for sure. Sages, however, are permanently red, with constant red veins distending towards their temples. So he could technically be either based on this assessment. I think we're supposed to be wondering. I, however, do think he's in ASIM territory. I think he definitely progressed into mid-tier ASIM. That's for sure. Yeah. Like, when you're playing Baldur's Gate and you get through level 1 really easily, but by the time you're at level 4, it takes you a while to get to the next level. I don't know.
I'm still stuck on level 3.
That sounds like a you problem. I leveled up all my characters last night.
Oh,
so.
Well, good for you. You don't have children that climb all over you. Despite Xaden having done this to save her, Sigale is not happy about what Xaden has done. He lowers the ice and lets her in, sharing his plan with her and expressing that, quote, she'll help with certainty because she loves him. In hindsight, we know that this is Xaden's intention to marry Violet, and the she and her is Violet that he's speaking of. She will help him by marrying him and therefore becoming the Duchess of Tyrandor, even though, like Nicole did mention, that is not actually said on the page at the very end, just that they're married, and they will get married by the High Priestess of Dune, who owes Xaden a favor. However, Sigale is like, yeah, Tairn won't let you near her now that you are an ASIM, or whatever else he might be, but Xaden convinces her to ask, and, quote, her decision will determine our fate. In a little bit, we'll talk about what this fate might mean for their bond, and it also reminds me of what Tairn said to Violet not too long ago when they were going into battle and he made her choose an objective, decide our fate. Both of these mated dragons are really putting a lot of faith into their writers. And I want to commend Sigale for how she is balancing this very difficult situation and coming to this compromise where they can ask and go from there. She loves Xaden and is so upset by what he's done that there is nothing left of him to forsake. And she still respects his wishes and wants to help him while being mindful of her mate and his rider. She is not abandoning her rider, but she's also not blindly siding with him.
Xaden's chapter ends with, quote, we're airborne in less than a minute. Less than a fucking minute? Rebecca Yarros, you cruel woman! If you remember back in Iron Flame, Xaden asked Violet how long she believes it would take for someone to fall out of love. And when it clicks for her that he's an intrinsic, he says, quote, less than a minute. That's how long it took you to fall out of love with me. And using less than a minute as the last line of his chapter here is so cruel. So cruel!
Here we go, friends. Next thing we know, the ending, chapter 66 of the book, opens with Violet waking up in the courtyard of Ryerson House back in Aricia. Remember that this is 4 hours away from Drathis, where she last remembers being in the woods at the edge of the field right after killing Theophony. Brennan is frantically worrying about her, checking her for injuries and demanding to know where she's been, because you see, it's 3 o'clock in the morning and 12 hours after the Battle of Drathis.
Let's talk about what havoc has been wreaked in the last 12 hours, because Violet sure as shit doesn't remember. As Wilson, a writer in Brennan's command, states, there are 4 riders and their dragons dead, plus 3 elders murdered in the valley, which I'm assuming this is the Valley of Aricia, in the last few hours. That's very important, in the last few hours. We don't know if that also associates with the 4 riders and dragons or just the elders, not sure. Good news, though, the wards around Drathis that Trissa and Felix were working on are still holding. The bad news is that there's 6 dragon eggs missing from the hatching grounds, and there's also still 4 riders missing. There were 5, but now that Violet's back, there's 4. Which, pause, this means that Imogen was not with Violet in the last few hours. This means that she was not of the missing, or else there would only be 3 riders now missing. My guess is that Imogen just came out to meet Violet, maybe Tairn communicated with Glenn to get her out here so that Imogen could wipe Violet's memories.
It's so funny because I never put 2 and 2 together. I always thought that Imogen was out with Violet and she might have been one of the people to help jog her memory, like because she had been present, but you were so right. She wasn't there.
Feels so good to hear you say that. I always hear it's a fun theory, Nicole, but man, that feels good. So who are the other 4 who were still missing?
Based on Wilson saying, quote, we all know Ryerson did this. I bet the other 3 are already dead. Yeah. We can assume he is including Xaden among the 4 riders missing.
So the only other one we have confirmed is Garrick, but we're assuming also Bodhi, if he is the Venin sibling, and Xaden. So there's only 3. We're missing 1.
Even if Bodhi is not the new brother, I feel like he would likely be trying to get to Xaden. So I could see Bodhi being among the missing too, but again, we do not know that.
Yeah.
Panchchek is another option, but he could be either among the missing or he could be among the 4 that are dead and their dragons. Again, we don't know for sure the timestamp or where these 4 riders and their dragons were. We are assuming Aricia and within the last few hours too, but that's not guaranteed. A lot of dragons and their riders did died during the battle, so I don't think that they would count them in those 4 dragon riders. Dane was last in the vicinity of Garrick near the Spiral Tower, and he was not seen at the end chapter. So he could be among the missing, but I don't know. I have a hard time imagining him being among the missing.
I could see it is if, like, for instance, him and Garrick took the eggs to go on a mission.
It could always be someone we may not know, or a total wild card like an assembly member, or Kaori. Aric is another strong possibility as well. He was last known to be ensuring Zelna's 1,000 soldiers got to Drathis. It feels like a stretch, though, with him. Same reason for Dane. He's got so many things going on, but he is precog, so he's a wild card in and of himself.
We have some more bad news, though, because so many people and dragons have all died, and the roads point to Xaden, who did it. The Violet hunting has officially begun. As Wilson says, quote, just because she's your sister doesn't mean she's not the fastest way, and then Brennan cuts him off. What wasn't said? The fastest way to kill Xaden is by killing Violet. This is exactly what Riddick was so fearful of. People wanting Xaden dead and knowing that if they killed Violet, the chain of events happen where it's Violet, Tairn, Sigale, Xaden. I'm assuming all bonds are still in place. We do not know that, which we'll talk about more in a second. I bet a lot of next book is Violet going to have to dodge assassination attempts again, but this time it's at Aricia rather than Bezgaeth.
I do absolutely agree that this line right here of Wilson being wary of Violet is major foreshadowing for the next book's conflict. We've been talking so much about our belief that Violet will have to learn a whole new level of leadership next book. But then I read this passage and I have to pause because while I do think she will really come into her own as a ruler, she is going to encounter some serious pushback and judgment against her. And I could see the first part of the book being her having to fight against the now tarnished reputation of Xaden and defend him without knowing herself what truly happened. Along these lines, I don't think her new title over Tyrandor is going to be accepted from many people right here in Aricia, but of course Navarre as well.
If Bodhi is gone next book, if he is the sibling, then people might be like, your Duchessism does not count because Bodhi might still be out there. And so there might be this discourse between POV. So if we do go into Xaden's POV and we discover that Bodhi is the sibling, then going into Violet's POV, people might not know where he is. So there's also this dichotomy of we're waiting on Bodhi before you rise up in the ranks.
I also could see them not want anything to do with Violet because she's married to the one who they think just killed everybody. So she doesn't really have a lot of credibility right now.
Oh, you know how Trissa and Battle Axe and all of them were like super mad at Violet last book? Think about next book.
Yeah, seriously.
I can't wait to I can't wait to read those scenes.
I do, for some reason, think that Llewellyn will stick by her and help her. And maybe even Aric will throw his royal weight around to get people to side with her. We're left with one of the biggest questions at the end of this book, and that is, what in the world happened in those 12 hours that resulted in this much slaughter? They say all the killing seemed to happen within the past few hours. So my guess is, first, Xaden and Sigale went to Tairn and Violet, she woke up, and they agreed to help. Second, Xaden and Violet flew back to Arisha to the Temple of Dune in order to get married by the High Priestess who owes him a favor. This means Xaden, the leveled up Venin, would have had to go behind the wards, which he was probably glad to do, and it made Tairn maybe feel the tiniest bit better. Third, they get married. And all of this would happen over at least 6 hours, which includes flying. And that leaves the second half of the 12 hours where they're already in Arisha and there's a bunch of shit going down with the hatching grounds.
So let's talk about who might be responsible for those 4 riders/dragons and the 3 elders' deaths. Because Wilson is so adamant about it being Xaden, I'm going to say it's not Xaden at least acting alone unhinged. Because of many reasons. One, because of what we know from him, because that just doesn't tend to happen with an MMC. But it also doesn't line up with what we know from the chapter 26 epigraph, which states that the first 24 hours after being removed from source magic, ASIMs are still even-tempered. We're only at 12 hours. So Xaden would have had to do this methodically rather than just like a Venin angry rampage. So I'm not saying that Xaden didn't do it. I'm saying that like angry Venin, evil Xaden didn't do it. And it was more calculated than that, which I'll get into in a moment.
Xaden and Violet would have already been in Arisha. So what if the other dragons figured out what was happening and tried to stop it? I don't know how that would have happened, or I don't think that they would care quite that much, but just, again, throwing spaghetti at the wall.
Well, okay, so along that line of thinking, and this kind of feels terrible, but I think it feels right, is that it was Tairn, Violet, Sigale, and Xaden all working together, because maybe the riders and the dragons were trying to hurt Ven and Xaden, which I get it. Like, I totally get it. It would also add another layer of Violet uncovering her memories whenever she has to, because she would be grappling with murder. This also might be one reason why Tairn is so tired. Killing another dragon leaves a mark on the soul, which we learned last book, that would be delicious foreshadowing for this moment. And he's not just killing any dragon. He would have been killing elders of the dragons. This would also mean that Violet would have had her hand in, probably, I'm not going to say absolutely, but this might mean that she also would have had her hand in the eggs. So going back to your thought from, I think it was either the reaction episode or just somewhere in the deep dive, about Violet getting her memories wiped because she had information, this would really align with that line of thinking.
Yes, and I will be getting to that momentarily, because I really do think she knows where those eggs are. Yeah.
Reading that part of your outline, I was like, yeah, she's onto something. I agree. Now, let's take Xaden, Violet, Tairn, Sigale, all of them off the table. The second highest likelihood, for me at least, I feel like would be Berwin. He had the daggers. He killed a green dragon instantly. Or whoever the male kin is, they could have done it. Although that would have meant they went evil real fast. They really took on that new role of Venin. But I'll also say, if Bodhi did go mad, I could see it.
I really do want to think that it was Berwin or the Venin. This would also mean that they would have had to get within the Arishan wards and go up against these dragons. And that's not impossible, but that would be very difficult for the Venin because they are not at full strength. They would not have their wyvern with them. And even though we are pretty sure Well, actually, no, because we did see that Theophony was able to do her distance walking / apparating within the Besgaeth dungeons there. So that does check out within the wards. If it was the venom that did all this damage, we have to wonder, wouldn't it be obvious that they were responsible for it? Or because the secret's out that Xaden is venom after his display of power with his shadows, there is evidence it was venom and they automatically assume it was Xaden. Or what if Berwyn woke up from being unconscious and went after Xaden behind the wards and literally went after him in Orisha, so Xaden inadvertently led the sage straight to Orisha, and then there could have been venom magic at work with their bond, and we just can't imagine any of that and how that would have gone down. But that's another possibility, that's how Berwyn knew to go to Orisha, and when he was there, he was able to go to the hatching grounds.
Okay. I think that's that would be nice answer.
That's exactly.
I'm trying to think of anything else of like that might be like a completely unhinged answer, and like all I can think of would be like Leothan, but with his pacifism and the other Erids, I just don't see that happening.
I don't see that either.
No,
yeah.
I think the most likely answer is Violet, Xaden, Tairn, and Sigale, and I guess Andarna.
I'm going to say venom were involved, and they were actually the good guys because I just can't get behind the fact that they already think that it was Xaden. Makes me believe it was not Xaden, but he was definitely involved in some way, but they were not the instigators.
But that's why I'm saying if it wasn't Xaden, because they're thinking it's some evil venom Xaden. I think it's calculated. We need these dragon eggs, which we'll talk about in a second, to go get. We're not just going in on a killing rampage. We're going in to get the dragon eggs, which did result in some deaths, unfortunately. And then they needed those eggs in order to go to, for instance, Umbriel, so that they would be able to win the war eventually with the aid of Umbriel.
Violet would never be okay with that, though. Remember back when she was talking to Riddick, and Riddick was pushing her to know where the line is, and he was saying if Xaden hurt other people, if he hurt other dragons, if he hurt innocents. So,
okay, that's true.
If she was one of the ones who assisted in killing these dragons, they would have had to she would have had to be on the defense in her way of thinking.
That's true.
Well, let's talk about the 6 missing dragon eggs. Because where in the world could they be? Stating the obvious, the 6 dragon eggs could be one from each den. But since no one but the elders know what color a dragon will be, that means the elders would have had to offer up that information before the eggs are taken, right? Then maybe that led to their death? I don't know.
So that's what I think. I think that the elders were defending the eggs and died defending the eggs, but the eggs were ultimately stolen.
Yes. So one possibility is that the venom had the missing eggs, especially if they were the ones that attacked the hatching grounds.
What if they want to bond dragons? Yeah.
Oh.
What if, oh dear. What if they want their most powerful 6? What if they have 6 most powerful venom and they want their version of the first 6 venom dragon riders?
My personal favorite is that Garrick has taken the eggs somewhere. And so there was this big showdown, and in order to save the eggs from being with the venom, they did take the eggs. I don't know how long it would have taken for Garrick to be able to distance walk again after he was pretty burnt out, but 6 to 12 hours seem like it could be some helpful rest time. We don't know that, but maybe. We can't forget how Umbriel asked for 12 dragon eggs, 2 of each den, so perhaps all they could get was 6, and Garrick is on a mission to get the eggs to Umbriel. Now, he would not be able to distance walk to Umbriel because there's no magic for him on that isle, but he could be on a mission to go there. Queen Marlies did wonder if they'll be back when they're more desperate for reinforcements. This could be their way of being desperate for reinforcements, now knowing that Xaden is fully venom, and they're like, oh shit, like almost like Xaden's like, in order to protect you from me, get this help from Umbriel.
And see, that line of Xaden thinking makes sense.
Yes.
Like, I could see him going after eggs if that's Xaden thinking.
Like I was saying, I really do think that Violet knows something about the missing eggs, and that's a major reason why she asked for her memory to be wiped. But again, we'll get to that shortly. The only way I see Xaden having these eggs in his possession if it's to keep them out of the bad venom's clutches. Or there's something to the magic in the metal that will be helpful in a way we can't fathom yet. Like maybe that's why they want these eggs. I don't know, ultimately.
What if the venom are making their own alloy? If the venom are making their own alloy, they would need palladium and mix of other metals and dragon eggshells. If they're making their own alloy so they can kill more dragons, this would make sense.
Yes, it would.
That's bad. bad.
That's so bad.
That's so bad.
It's so much fun to speculate all this because at the end of the day, nobody knows, right? And we have a long time before the next book comes out to keep thinking through the possibilities because you can bet your booty this is not the last you'll hear of us theorizing about it.
Hell no. Let's turn our attention to another thing we have no answers on, and that is who's still bonded with who. We know that Tairn and Violet and Andarna are all still bonded together. That is a given. But Sigale, Tairn, Xaden? No idea. Let's start with a bond between Xaden and Violet. We don't know if it's still there. The way Violet phrases, quote, I fling myself down the bond, but there's nothing there. It's gone. I do not think that her and Xaden are still bonded. She tries to convince herself that it might be just because he's too far away. And yes, that's a possibility, but the fact that she said that makes me think that's not the case. So who is severed with who? Let's go through some options. Number 1, Sigale broke the bond with Xaden. This way, Sigale could still stay with Tairn without their mate bond suffering. Although Xaden would have to pull from the source in order to sustain his magicalness, and that's just terrifying to think about. Or number 2 option is Sigale and Tairn broke their bond. This way, Sigale could still stay with Xaden and keep him from turning / protect him further, hopefully. Especially given what Theophony says to Violet when she's taunting her and giving her lessons. Theophony says, quote, to survive in the Venom world, you must protect the magic that sustains you. So technically the magic that sustains Xaden is twofold. It's Sigale magic and source magic. If Sigale and Xaden are still bonded, meaning Sigale and Tairn broke their bond, Xaden would still be able to rely on her magic to sustain him.
There's also the ominous line when Violet reaches for her bond with Tairn and it seems he's asleep, leading Andarna to say, quote, he needs a cycle of rest to recover. And Violet's like, recover from what? He was fine when she killed Theophony, which is the last thing she remembers. So we can rule him out being tired just from battle. And it definitely is a clue about what happened in the past 12 hours. Is Tairn needing to recover because a bond was severed, like Nicole is saying here? Mates' lives are dependent on each other. If one dies, so does the other. To our knowledge, mating bonds can't be broken, though we have Andarna the Irid, so anything is on the table. In other words, maybe she was able to break the bond between him and Sigale, and he's needing to recover from that. Or is he recovering because he was in battle with the other dragons and he even killed, leaving that mark on the soul? Again, like what Nicole was saying.
No matter what, I don't think the bond between Xaden and Violet will stay severed. I do think it is severed right now, but I don't think it will stay severed. We learned from Leothin earlier this book that Andarna can create bonds. So I 1000% believe that she will be involved in creating a new bond for Xaden and Violet. How the magic of that will work, I have no idea, because I don't see her creating a second bond with Xaden. Instead, I see her almost like creating a magical bond just between Xaden and Violet. Now, a little kind of dark twist of this could be, is this means that if Sigale and Tairn both do die next book or in book 5, Xaden and Violet could still potentially be connected through Andarna making a bond for each other, for them.
I think about it and it's like, if any bond was severed, I personally think it would be Xaden and Sigale. I just can't imagine Sigale and Tairn severing their mating bond. Though you do bring up a great point about Sigale maybe wanting to stay with Xaden so he still has her as a power source. And then a lot of readers have pointed out that Sigale has chosen Xaden over Tairn in the past, like keeping his second signet a secret. So she could be doing it again in the biggest way. But I could see Xaden not wanting to risk her life again with Berwyn still alive and wanting to kill his dragon. So he would let both his girls go to protect them. I don't see Xaden wanting her around for her own safety.
I agree, but I also, I worry about Sigale being around next book, because if she's around, people would probably be pissed at her. Would they try to take her out like Jack fucking Barlow did with Andarna and Threshing, but this time just on a bigger scale?
They can try with Sigale.
I know. Try is really the best word for it. But I don't know. I just because I think about if she stayed in Erasia, what would that mean plot-wise? And that would just be heartbreaking for Violet so honestly, to push the story forward, I think it makes the most sense for her to have broken the bond with Xaden, like you're saying. But that means Xaden would have had to pull more to sustain himself.
Not necessarily, because that was only the case for initiates. We don't know what it's like for venom when they level up.
That's true. Turning our attention to a different bond, because we've barely talked about this, and Darna's fucking here, even 12 hours later, because Tairn is completely down for the count right now, and Darna is the one who's awake and seems fine. As Violet groggily stands, quote, a shape moves in the shadows to the right, and Andarna vows, quote, I will not let them burn you. Oh my god, these fucking pronouns. I need some nouns, people, please! Let's talk about what these shadows might be and who this them is that Andarna is referring to. Some believe that this shape is actually Andarna. She's watching over her rider. She's blending into the background so that people don't see her.
That's what I think it is.
Yeah, especially because there's not really a mention of Andarna's form standing next to Violet through the rest of the chapter. Then we can also assume that this them she's referring to is the Eurasian writers, because as we see with Wheelson, they're all too happy to take Violet, whether that's interrogate or kill, we don't know. Also, that's what they do with traitorous writers. We saw that back and forth with Amber Mavis and how she was killed by Tairn when she was a fuckface. Aside from that, because I do think that is a really strong argument, another popular opinion is that the shape in the shadows is actually Xaden, and it's him moving away. Maybe him and Violet made the decision together to have Imogen wipe her memories. But Imogen does say that she hasn't seen Xaden since yesterday. She could be lying, though. So Xaden could have just dropped Violet, and then watched over her, making sure she got in others' care, okay, and then left. Then this them that Andarna is referring to is still the Eurasian writers for the same reason as last point. However, there's another opinion that I was pretty adamant about until I gaslit myself into believing opinion number one on this, and that is the shape in the shadows could be Leothin. And this them Andarna is referring to is the other Irids, especially because Andarna says, I will not let them burn you. It's not kill you, which I don't know. They actually could go both ways with the Eurasian writers. Why would the Irids be back in Eurasia, though? Maybe Andarna said something to convince them to come back and fight the war, or specifically with Leothin, like we were saying earlier, he saw the threat. He wants to stick around a little bit more. The more I write this reasoning, though, I'm pretty sure it is number one. The shape is Andarna, especially because Brennan, of all people, would be like, oh my god, I sat by your bedside for 3 days while you mourned your dragon loss.
Yep.
Yeah, she's back.
Yep, I agree that the shape is Andarna moving in the shadows, and Violet is here under very suspicious circumstances. Yes, her brother is very happy that she's back, but it is clear that her presence here is raising a lot of suspicions. She has been missing and is now married to suspect number one. So it's Andarna promising to protect her rider from getting killed by angry dragons who think she had a hand in their kin's murders.
Well, and especially if she did. If she and Xaden and Tairn and Sigale all went on this rampage together, again, I don't think it was fueled by murder. I think it was fueled by something else entirely. And Darna would know, because she's bonded to Violet right now.
Yep.
So I think it's number one. I think the shadow moving is Andarna.
This just sets up so much tension that Violet will have to overcome next book. She is married to the Duke of Tyrrendor, who has gone absolutely crazy as far as everybody is concerned. She is not trusted, and people think she has a hand in what went down here. No matter that Xaden's shadows saved the day against the attack on Drathis and enabled them to have the time and to be able to get the wards up even if they are weak. That show of power means everyone now knows he's Venin, and therefore he cannot be trusted, which automatically means Violet can't be trusted either, hence why she ensured her memory would be wiped. But I'm getting ahead of myself. As Violet raises her hand, everyone notices a gold emerald ring on her finger. The finger! Her ring finger! Oh my goodness gracious! It's one of the emeralds from the Blade of Orisha that Violet noticed was missing a while back. Xaden had it made into a ring, and he was planning on proposing to her, but this kind of made plans go a little bit quicker. By the way, Rebecca had this same ring made, and wow, I've seen it up close, and it is gorgeous.
I was in prep for Onyx Storm doing so much gem watch around, like, you know, the different rings, and there's a ring that Suri's wearing in the council meeting that's also an emerald ring. So when Rebecca showed us her ring, I was like, it's Suri's ring! And then I was like, no, it's not, you idiot.
And then Nicole totally gem watched Rebecca Yarros.
I didn't mean to. But speaking of gem watch, let's talk about gem watch. Emeralds symbolize royalty, foresight, and are considered a stone of love, representing true love, strong connections, and faithfulness. All checks out.
Not only is there a ring on Violet's ring finger, and she has no idea how it got here, there is a paper with the seal of Dune in Violet's pocket, and with her permission, Brennan opens it. And the paper is an official blessing of Violet's legal binding marriage to Xaden Ryerson by the head priestess of Dune's temple. Aw, they're married. But like Violet thinks, the immediate rush of awe trips over the logic of how. She has no recollection of getting married to the love of her life, and that's certainly not something she would forget. Our girl has not had that much lavender lemonade.
But what's on the outside of this marriage license? 7 words. 7! Quote, "Don't look for me. It's yours now." As much as I hate Xaden being gone, I love this so much. It's exactly like last ending. I loved the plot twist that he turned Venom, and simultaneously I hated it because I was like, no, my boy. But I was like, oh, this is delicious storytelling. Oh my God.
It's what the whole book has been leading up to. As we've pointed out for the past 11 episodes, there is so much foreshadowing for this. And hey, I get how people compare this to Edward Cullen, but I guess the way I see this situation is that Xaden has known something like this is going to happen all book. He's been preparing Violet, Bodhi, and even everyone else around him by making it clear Violet is his equal partner and they need to listen to her too. And now the time has come, and he literally cannot be in Orisha without getting killed on sight. He is noticeably Venom now with the red veins webbing from his eyes. You can't hide that shit. And he doesn't trust himself. He has less control now than ever before, and he can't risk hurting Violet or other loved ones. And hopefully not dragons, which what the heck is all that about? Of course he left after he leveled up as a Venom and wants to protect Violet from what he has become. So, like Rebecca says, you have a romance over 5 books, you gotta have conflict. And this leaves so many possibilities for what's next, both with the overall storyline and these character developments.
These 7 words lead to a big question. Where the fuck is Xaden Ryerson? Option number 1, he's gone off on his own. After all, he does not want to aid the Venom, but he can't necessarily be anywhere within his own province. He is a shadow wielder after all, though. He could be very good at hiding away.
Or option 2, knowing that there are 3 other writers missing, one of which we know is Garrick, I wonder if they have formed their own little group away from Berwyn, and they're going to like have a heist or something like that to get whatever it is that Xaden still needs from Berwyn. Like maybe one of the missing writers is the new brother and is with Berwyn, and then there's Xaden, Garrick, and one other, or maybe it's Panchchek and he's also dead, off on their own.
Option number 3, and I believe this is the most probable. He is with Berwyn and the rest of his Venom family, especially with this new sibling. I don't see him wanting to leave whoever that person is in Berwyn's care. Also, with Xaden progressed, we now know that ASIMs can't resist the call of their sage. So even if Xaden was elsewhere, or if he was golfing with the boys, he would be called back to Berwyn, and he would have to obey.
See, I think that's where Garrick could come in and hold him off and be like, "No, honey bear." I'm just getting delirious at this point. Okay.
He could tackle into the ground and distance wield them somewhere else.
Yes, that's exactly what I think, actually. Yes. Okay, so this is exactly what could happen here. So Xaden's off brooding and regrouping to figure out what to do next and how to take Berwyn down. And he's with his honey bear Garrick, who is not afraid of ASIM Xaden and stands by his side to strategize next step. And every time Xaden is pulled toward Berwyn, Garrick distance walks them very far away, so Berwyn has to start over.
I think that's a great story for anyone but Rebecca Yarros, who loves to rip our hearts out. But there's this other part of these 7 words, and that is, it's yours now, which kind of has a million different meanings. Number 1, Tyrandor is hers, as she is the implied Duchess now. Then there's this number 2 meaning of his soul. There was that last little piece, so it could be him referencing that last little piece of his soul still belongs to her.
This makes me think Violet's love for him has something to do with bringing his soul back so that he can be cured of his venomism.
Number 3, his heart is hers. He has gone down the path of what he assumes constant on the ice emotionless Venom. And as we saw in his chapter POV by him using words like the organ inside my chest instead of his heart, it's almost like he believes his heart doesn't even exist anymore for her, which is a nice callback to the prophecy about a heart that beats for her doing the right thing for the wrong reason. So basically he's saying, my heart is still yours, because it doesn't feel like it's my own anymore. The 3rd installment of this saga ends as such. Violet realizes that 12 hours are missing from her mind, and she knows there's only one real reason. So, turning to Imogen, our beloved short-term memory eraser, Violet asks her, what did she do? And Imogen's eyes slowly meet Violet's. Quote, what you asked me to. Oh my God. Chills. This ending was so cruel, especially because it's at the bottom of a page and you want to flip it to the next page and it's just blank, which Rebecca did confirm with us that she did not do that on purpose. But this ending was fucking satisfying. Oh, it was so good. It leaves us readers with a million questions. What did Violet say to Imogen to get her to wipe her memories? What did Violet do to want them wiped in the first place? And of course, what the fuck happened for those last 12 hours? And how is Violet going to get her memories back?
Let's speculate then how Violet might learn what happened in those 12 hours. Rebecca hinted in our Denver interview that there were others present during those 12 hours. The first character that comes to mind is Tairn. He will know what happened. But I feel like him just filling her in after she had Imogen wipe her memories is far too simple of a solution and not something he would do. I could see Tairn not telling Violet because he's respecting her wishes, and at some point he will let little hints slip. If Violet's desperate to get her memories back, if that's even possible once they're wiped, I wonder if Dane will be able to retrieve her memories and help her. But I also feel like if she asked Imogen to wipe her memories, Imogen may convince Violet not to prod for the information. It'll drive Violet crazy not knowing about this very important event that happened to her and Xaden, but she'll also have to trust herself that she ensured she doesn't remember for a reason. And that's a really cool play on Violet as a character, and we've known her these past several books. She needs information. And in this case, it would be her needing information, but having to trust her previous self who did not have the memories wiped that she does not technically need this information. I definitely believe that she and Imogen had her memories wiped so she does not know where Xaden is or what their plans are. Because I think she knows what happened with the missing eggs and even more information about Xaden and the missing writers, and for everyone's safety, she needed to forget in case she is interrogated or simply can't know as the leader of the province now. To help keep Tyrandor safe and make all this worth it, she can't know what happened in those 12 hours and what plans were made. Or hell, maybe she's even afraid that Dane will read her memories, and this is how she can ensure he won't because the memory won't exist anymore. But again, we don't know exactly how the memory wiping and retrieving works.
I think this option will entirely depend on what happens to a memory when Imogen wipes it. Is it fully erased from existence? Is there like a blanket over it that can be retrieved if necessary? I'm leaning towards Violet will try to retrieve it with Dane, but he won't be able to find it because it no longer exists. So it's almost going to be like that false hope moment for us readers.
I could see that too, yeah. Someone else we know who was in attendance was the High Priestess. Violet could go to her searching for answers. Like maybe she wants to ask the High Priestess, how did this ring end up on my finger? I think we'll get bits and pieces of information in book 4 where no one is just going to lay out exactly what happened. And we'll find out gradually from a few different people. I could even see there being a prologue that opens the book with a teaser of the wedding that is packed with Easter eggs, none of which will make sense until we learn more throughout the book. And then when we go back and reread it, it'll be like, oh my gosh, like all of this makes sense. Thinking about, I promise no spoilers, but Kindred's Curse Saga.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so good. I love that. Ooh, I love the idea that we're going to get a lot of different pieces and bits of information, but it'll be so out of order. And you know what your and I's job is going to be for book 4? It's to put them in order and put them in all one download. I am still on team. I think Violet is going to learn about these 12 hours through dreams with Xaden. Whether he's, telling her as she pops into dreams with him, or if she pops into dreams of him having dreams of their wedding. I don't know why I have this huge gut feeling, but I feel like she's going to learn about the wedding from Xaden. Maybe that's just the romantic in me, where it's like, it feels so wrong if she's learning about her husband and how they ended up husband and wife from not her husband. But I will say, Xaden and Violet have shared memories before, and they even questioned about why they can do that earlier this book. So what if all of that was just foreshadowing or priming us for him to eventually share their wedding memory together?
In this signet power segment of the episode, let's move to the power of precognition by speculating what certain lines could mean for books 4 and 5, because we're done foreshadowing for the rest of this book. Time just to throw more spaghetti at the walls, people.
Theophony says that Violet doesn't have Xaden's love in the way Violet would want it. Quote, "We're excellent actors, but our kind does not feel what you call love." And immediately that gets Violet's attention, to the point where she even says, "You're lying," and then she internally thinks, quote, "I would know." Again, I keep going back to this pattern of 3 that Violet mentioned about who we think, the Venin who did experience love or who are still in love, leaving those who they do love unharmed. I'm so far in this hill that I'm not even willing to die on it. It is just canon.
That line about how Venin are excellent actors and pretend to love, it feels like a clue as to who might be a Venin hiding in plain sight within Navarre. Daddy Atos, even maybe pretending to love Dane's mother. I do not have the source on this, so please take this with a grain of salt, but apparently Rebecca did say in an interview that Dane's mom would play some kind of role. So maybe her role is that her dad pretended to love her.
I was like, trying that again. Also, Imogen thinks how there must be a rune somewhere that will keep their lenses clear in combat, especially when it's raining. And I'm like, yeah, this seems like something obvious that would be created. And because Imogen is so good at runes, I think she's going to make one next book. I'm also going to throw out there that because Violet and Xaden are married, we are definitely getting a wife call next book. And I am feral for it. I'm so excited.
We've donned our signets, so now let's tap into our mind of a scribe and examine the meaning of key epigraphs from this stretch of chapters.
The final epigraph of this book is actually a callback to an epigraph in Fourth Wing. The Fourth Wing chapter 30 epigraph, this is the scene where Violet and Xaden have sex for the first time. Yes, it's the armoire scene, is from Article 5, Section 7 of the Dragon Riders Codex. And it says, quote, "Though not forbidden, cadets are strongly encouraged not to develop strong romantic attachments while studying in the quadrant for the efficiency of the unit." Whereas the Onyx Storm chapter 66 epigraph from that same section of the Codex states, quote, "While cadets are strongly encouraged not to form any romantic attachments while studying in the quadrant, lieutenants are permitted to marry whomever they choose upon graduation." It's also another callback to a moment from Fourth Wing where Violet and Dylan, R.I.P. my boy, Dylan! Dylan! My boy! I miss him. They're talking about how riders can marry sooner than other quadrants because they want powerful riders to continue bloodlines. I love that we are getting primed for a end of book 3 cliffhanger in chapter 1 of Fourth Wing. Oh my God.
I remember when we first read this epigraph right before the chapter, of course, and you and I were like, oh my God, like we know what's about to happen. Of course, we had no idea that it would happen like that. We thought we might actually get to see a wedding, but anyway. You know, like, of course, we have gotten so much foreshadowing for this moment this entire book, right down to Second Squad joking about how they're surprised Melgren hasn't already hauled Violet and Xaden to the temple to get married. Like, yeah!
Yes! Now, let us step into the archives for the last time, where each episode Lexi educates us on a world-building topic to help us better understand this world and the magic within it.
Today's archives topic is bonds, especially with all these theories about bond severing, Andarna returning, the weird bonds between Venin. We gotta go through them. We'll start with the bond we're most familiar with, dragon bonds. This is a bit of a refresher, but I'm explaining anyway. The strength of a dragon's bond, both to mate and rider, is dependent on the strength of the dragon. These bonds are also weaker when they are new and they grow over time. Dragons are able to form bonds with a single rider of their choice. Because dragons are picky about who they bond with, their rider must first make it to threshing before being deemed worthy of bonding a dragon. We know that dragons are able to bond at any age, and they have to go through the rite of benefaction first. But it's technically not allowed for them to bond until they mature. For one, younger dragons aren't able to carry their rider yet, but the primary reason is that they can accidentally gift their rider with their feathertail gift since it's harder for them to control the bond. Remember Fourth Wing storyline? Once a dragon and rider bond, the rider's life is tied to the dragon's. If the dragon dies, the rider cannot survive and will die as well within minutes, unless the rider has another source of power to supplement with, like pulling from the source, or, in Violet's case, another dragon. Alternatively, this does not necessarily go the other way. If a rider dies, it's not guaranteed that the dragon will also die. But each time a dragon bonds with a new rider, the bond is stronger than the previous one, which increases the chances of a dragon dying if their chosen bonded rider dies. However, there are only 3 dragons on record who have died from their rider dying, so this is very rare for the bond to be that strong and powerful. Also, after bonding, a dragon gives a rider a relic, which allows the dragon to channel magic down the bond into their rider, leading to the rider manifesting a signet. Dragons are also able to speak telepathically to their chosen rider. Outside of normal dragon bonds, the Irids, aka the 7th Dragon Den, have their own unique bonds with humans. Since Irids are magic, they can bend, shape, and even break bonds as they see fit. Only an Irid is able to become the second bonded dragon to a rider, as humans should only be capable of bonding to a single dragon. And if that rider has an active second bond like Violet, once the Irid breaks the bond, the rider can continue living because the other dragon will sustain their life. But this is still an extremely painful process, both physically and emotionally. In the process of severing the bond, there is a shrieking whistle sound followed by sudden silence. When reaching for the bond, it feels like it's being blocked by a wall before ultimately turning into nothing. If you want more information on all things Irid, please listen to our episode 8 archives. There is only one other bond more sacred than that of a dragon and its rider: mated dragons. There is no stronger bond than that between 2 mated dragons. It goes beyond the depth of human love or adoration to a primal, undeniable requirement for proximity. The mating bond connects the dragons together in a lifelong bond, leaving them interdependent on one another. This includes their lives being interconnected. If one mate dies, the other follows soon after, as one cannot survive without the other. Mated pairs also can't be separated for long, or their health diminishes, so they are supposed to always be stationed together. But the longer mates are together, the farther they are able to communicate across distances. For example, Tairn and Sigale have been mated for an unknown amount of time, at minimum 6 years, we at least know that, but they can't communicate across long distances. Meanwhile, the other mated dragon pair that we know of, Grime and Maze, they've been mated for many decades, and therefore they can communicate long distances, like from Samara to Biscayeth, which is an 8-hour flight. There are no secrets between mates, and they're open to sharing memories between each other. However, doing so with another dragon who is not their mate, it's uncomfortable and pretty taboo. As for the riders of the mated pairs, because of the bond with their dragons, the riders also become bonded in a way. While it's not guaranteed, some riders of mated pairs are able to form a mental connection, like Xaden and Violet, and this connection can be a great advantage in battle. Moving on to griffin bonds. Like dragons, griffins are able to bond with a human and channel powers into them, but only after their flyer-to-be jumps off a cliff and successfully grabs onto a griffin flying by. The amount of magic is a lesser amount and less powerful than dragon magic. The flyer will get a gift, it's their version of a signet, and they excel in lesser magics. Also, when a griffin bonds, it does so for life. That is a big difference between griffin bonds and dragon bonds. This leaves the flyer and griffin forever intertwined. It doesn't matter which one dies first, the other will die shortly afterward. Okay, now let's talk about venom bonds. We don't know a whole lot about how venom are interconnected, but we do know that venom have a bond of some kind with other venom, allowing them to sense each other, especially the newly turned venom. This is what allows the elder venom, I'll call them, to find the freshly pulled initiates and ASIMs and add them to their venom family. Initiates and ASIM can sense each other, but they cannot sense sages or mavens. Then there's a venom mentor, who is a sage or maven, and their student, who they may refer to as their child, as we saw from Berwyn and Panchchek's exchange, calling Jack his son. There is a mysterious and unexplainable bond between mentor and mentee, where the mentee literally cannot kill their mentor, and their mentor can summon their lower level venom, as Berwyn demonstrated with Xaden against his will. He physically could not resist the call of his sage. I have a feeling we're going to learn a lot more about these bonds next book. Venom and wyvern bonds are not like that of dragons and griffins with their humans, because venom are the power source for wyvern to be animated. Since venom put a runed onyx stone inside the wyvern, we can assume the bond is one-sided, and the venom are just able to get intel through the wyvern somehow. But since we don't know how this works, it's kind of impossible to know for sure the extent of any bond between these two, the venom and the wyvern, and how that, I'll call it, hive mind works. And there you have it, bonds!
Let us close out the last segment of this Onyx Storm coverage with taking flight with our favorite moments. Each and every book, I love just more and more how the magic is described, specifically for Violet because we're in her head, and how she wields. From like the rain sizzling on her skin to her head burning and like the burning behind her eyes, her lungs feeling on fire, and then she like takes a sip of water and it like eases it a little bit. Like every bit of the writing of the magic, it just feels so rich.
I absolutely agree. I always love whenever magic feels very tangible when it's described. And I also love the consequences and exertion that magic has on someone. And I think my favorite description of Violet using her power is when she spools it like molten thread. She does that a few times in this book, and I just love it so much. I can see it so vividly.
We learned the name of Felix's dragon, Nirlach. Now, I could not find any reputable Gallic sites that could translate the full word or like a shorter version of it, but I did find that loch, so the second half of it, means wild duck. So who knows? I love Glaine and her sass, specifically how she teases Imogen about not telling Garrick how she feels. And that's definitely happening next book. I'm convinced.
From that same chapter, I love how Quinn calls Imogen Jen. We see such a softer side of Imogen in her POV chapter with her best friend, and I just love it so much. Like, I never would have imagined that to be her nickname. So I love it. This is small, but we need a little bit of humor in Xaden's POV chapter. How he thinks the robes the Venin wear are ridiculous. I can picture him learning to be a Venin and being told to wear the robes, and he's like, ugh, do I have to?
His narration of other people it never ceases to make me smile of just how he narrates other people, like Dane specifically, and now I'm sure we're going to get that with the Venin next book.
And with that, friends, we conclude our deep dive of Onyx Storm. Oh my goodness, who just got chills? I just got chills.
I got teary-eyed.
You all, we did it. Listeners, thank you so much for being on this journey with us. This has been absolutely amazing. Like Nicole and I have been saying, we've really been planning for this since December, like rereading Fourth Wing and Iron Flame and doing all sorts of prep for the episodes leading up to it, and then interviewing Kaya and Gabriel, and of course the midnight release party and just everything that has happened since then.
Interviewing Rebecca Yarros.
That too, yes. So listeners, just want to check in. How are you feeling right now? Sad?
I'm sad. I'm both sad because it's like Empyrean is home for us.
Yeah.
It's what we started with. It's always whenever we go back to read after, like, like for instance, after we broke from Iron Flame and then we came back to it after ACOTAR, it was like, oh my God, it feels like coming home.
It really does.
I'm so excited for, the next book title release or the cover release or any Easter eggs that Rebecca Yarros just gives us and us to do emergency bonus episodes at 5:00 in the morning. I'm so excited. But Empyrean is always just such a gift, and I'm so happy we shared it with all of you.
Me too. It's very bittersweet. And like you were saying, don't worry, friends. This definitely will not be the last of our Empyrean content before the next book. Anytime there is new news, we will be on it.
Like, for instance, actually next Monday, we are releasing our recorded live Q&A with our fan club from a few weeks ago. This is the first time we've publicly shared a live Q&A from the fan club, so it felt fitting for it to be our final Onyx Storm Q&A. And it's also to give ourselves a little bit of a break as we go into prepping our next series, which is the Kindred's Curse Saga. I'm right now rereading it in prep for the deep dive. I can't wait to deep dive this book. I'm so excited. Oh my God. It is by Penn Cole. We are starting with book 1, Spark of the Everflame, on May 5th, 2025. Episode 1 will cover the prologue all the way through chapter 6. And yes, even from the beginning of this deep dive, we are including spoilers for all 3 of the released books. So that includes Spark, Glow, and Heat of the Everflame. Link to get all the books are in the show notes.
We would love to give the biggest warm welcome to our newest Iron Squad members. And you all are our last Iron Squad before we move to the new tier name.
So welcome to Vanessa P, Shauna T, Avery T, Celine E, Emerald M, and Anna. Welcome.
Yay! We appreciate you so much. Thank you for supporting the show. Mwah, mwah, mwah. And if you're like, hey, I want my name shouted out on the podcast and to be shouted with all the love and attention too, then please be sure to join our fan club at fantasyfangirls.com/fan club. The link is also in the show notes.
Especially if you want to be in the first batch of the new tier name shout out. Ayo. Thank you, as always, to our resident scribe curator, aka our content researcher, Brooke, and our executive producer, aka our sanity manager, Hayden. We love you both.
We are very active on social media, so please be sure to follow us on Instagram and / TikTok at Fantasy Fangirls Pod. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button to keep following along.
And while you're hitting buttons, please hit that 5-star rate and review button on whatever podcasting platform you are listening on. And if you want to go above and beyond, write a little love note in the review section. It is the best thing you can do, not only for this podcast, but for any podcast you listen to. And friends, last but not least, share this episode with your fellow Onyx Storm buddies. If you were wondering who the sibling, kin, venom family, the male relative, if you will, was, then this is a great episode to send to them.
All right, friends. Bye-bye.
Bye.